Good evening, everybody. Today is May the 4th, 2021. Time is a little bit after 5:30. On behalf of the Board of Education, welcome. We are so blessed and very happy that you've taken the time from your evening to spend some time with us as we try to understand and take moves to make our district the district that it needs to be for our children. So again, on behalf of the Board of Education, thank you for joining us. We have a pretty full schedule today. It begins with what we call a special meeting. That should be relatively brief. And then we have two committee meetings today, governance, which is chaired by Commissioner Malloy. And then we also have a policy committee meeting, which is chaired by Commissioner Powell. So we'll get right to the business of the board's work. And that most important work, aspect of that work, begins by listening to people who have something to say to us. We have, as I understand it, 7 speakers. Is that right, Madam Clerk?
That is correct, President White. We have 7 speakers with us tonight. And if you're able, I'm going to go ahead and begin and bring our first speaker in, who is Mary Adams, a parent of the district, and she will be speaking regarding the budget alignment with the strategic plan. Welcome, Mary. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much. Let me just get my, okay, so I really just wanted to speak to Dr. Myers-Small and the board in a supportive way. I really, I know when I get going, I've got points that I'm making, but I really authentically want you to know that I'm in support of your efforts to meet the demands of the students that have been articulated, specifically around hiring more Black and Brown educators, culturally responsive curriculum and pedagogy, anti-racism development, and restorative practices. I really believe that you intend to do this work. I also know that there have been people before you who have fully intended and been committed to the work and been qualified in this district, just resists and deflects. So I just really want to urge you in this budget process, even without the significant forthcoming federal money, to really lay down a framework with specificity as much as you can. I know there's stuff to be determined, as much as you can with specificity, build a framework. And then regarding, so I just want to say that money flowing through has to still be, you still have to continue your course with your strategies for being responsible with the money. If there are certain things that need to be scaled back because of enrollment, I support that. But I do not want an austerity mindset with respect to the supports for students when we have these resources coming. If they're not used very carefully and intentionally, they will get spent. Central office has all kinds of strategic frameworks within central office, strategic uses for software and technology that we've seen millions and millions and millions over the years just flow through. So please have a careful plan in place to use the money for student centering activities. Regarding the strategic task force process, I've just been reached out to. This has not been transparent. There's concerns about lack of parent involvement. And I just would really, really urge you to please make sure that there's a critical mass of members on those task forces, all of them, with expertise and commitment to culturally responsive education and inclusive discipline. We have a deep bench here. It's been contentious. There's people, there's feelings and things, but you need to pull, please, I urge you to please pull from the expertise that exists. Do you have Victorious Minds Academy innovators in these task forces? Do you have teacher center lesson plan experts, classroom educators with that expertise? Are they on these committees? Do you have principals like Sharon Jackson, who turned around a school with her linguistic expertise, her deep engagement with bilingual families, her ability to do portfolio assessments on top of standardized assessments? There's so much there that can inform. We also need youth. We need youth history ambassadors, rock responders, bilingual parents, freedom school parents, all of these historical efforts that have been sprouted and never grown. They exist and they all need to be brought in now. So please, please do that. One final thing, be sure that you have rubrics and criteria for culturally responsive practices in all of these task forces. These are credible and readily available. NYU Steinhardt, East UR Partnership, the Teacher Center, work on Gloria Latz and Billings' work. Those foundations must be brought in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to bring in our next speaker, who is Tatiana Welsh, another parent who is speaking about the stimulus funding for schools. Tatiana?
Hello.
Welcome. Whenever you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So my name is Tatiana Welch, and I am a mother of 2 who are in the district. And I just wanted to comment, on where the money was going. I know you guys have to include the people, the public, and things like that. And, I kind of did a consensus with my community, and they're saying they would like money spent on fresh, healthy, and nutritious hot meals for our children. Teachers, administrators, and support staff that represent our student body, which is 53.1% Black and Brown, 32.7% Hispanic and Latino, 96% white, and 2.9 Asian. We also would like the hiring of support staff, such as trauma counselors, social workers, social emotional support workers, caseworkers, and parent liaisons, like 1 per grade for each school. We also would like the implementation of extracurricular activities such as sports, band, music, enrichment programs, conflict resolution programs, and leadership programs, as well as summer programs to make up for the loss of learning this year and last year due to COVID. And just the inclusion of us and make sure that we're there every step of the way as parents, as, guardians, and as educators as well, and as the community in general. And I'm speaking on me as a parent, as well as other people who held this consensus in this poll and agree that these are the things that we would like to see, as well as the teams with attitudes that spoke out the other day, saying what they want the money to go to, as well as more teachers and lessen the teacher to student ratio and promote more healthier learning environment and student-based learning. That helps as well. We also would like some type of board created to help with the board create transparency, accountability, and inclusion of all stakeholders. And we mean like with student boards, a student ran board that the students can be implemented in a democracy to help these things get pushed along so their voices can be heard, not just parents, not just, activists and things like that, but the students themselves. We want them to be included in this. There's got to be a way we could do student jobs within the school district, within the school board, to help fund our economy as well. So those are really the main thing, especially fresh, hot food. I believe I said that first. I just wanted to make sure I said that. So that's where a lot of my constituents and my community members are looking for, and teachers and advocates on my end are looking for the funding to at least go towards that. And, I do understand that most of it's supposed to be going, 80% is supposed to be going directly towards making sure learning is enforced correctly and things like that. So I just want to make sure we're all included as well in every step of the way and throughout the 90-day process that the board has to get this funding and this plan out, done, approved, and implemented. And then as well as the follow-up, because we have until 2024 to spend all of this money. So that's about as much as I would like to say. And I appreciate having me and giving me the time and platform to say anything.
Thank you, Tatiana. We appreciate you speaking with the board tonight.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Our next speaker is supposed to be Edward Donnelly. I do not see him in the waiting room.
I'm out of the waiting room.
There you are.
I'm live.
Hi, Edward. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Do you already know my information, or do I need to?
No, you're good to go.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for inviting me this week after being found in the spam folder last week. It's very kind of everyone. I normally don't speak, request to speak. I've already emailed each of the board members my remarks, so I'll briefly highlight some of those points and add a couple current events. Today, I'm speaking as a volunteer supporting refugee families as a member of Rochester International Academy, RIA's advisory board, and chairperson of Friends of RIA Incorporated. And from my email, I sit on those boards. I work with Rochester Refugee Resettlement Services. I'm a homeowner for 10 years and live in the city now for 2 years. I enthusiastically support the programs at RIA. I've been directly observing, participating. I asked the school board to review the PowerPoint slides that we shared a couple weeks ago. All the strengths that RIA brings to our newcomer students and their families and the population that I see in the apartments I visit. And that'll only grow as our nation's renewed interest in accepting refugee families again. President Biden's executive order immediately welcoming 62,500 refugees, and with even more coming this fall, the moment is right. So first, when I read the district strategic plan, I see that RIA has the experience addressing at least 8 of those 11 plan priorities. RIA's unique success story in our CSD. And over again, students who are attending school, they're not dropping out, they're not being suspended. RIA teachers and staff are using restorative practices that are essential, especially for children dealing with trauma, achieving an ELA in math, and they're graduating. And I've gone to 3 graduations now volunteering. It's amazing. And they're going on to college, or they're going on to work hard in careers. Our school district, this is a success. I hope we're not going to throw out successful schools because of budgets. And I think budget situations have improved as a result of our state legislatures funding again, which is great news. So we would benefit by not reducing staff and programming at RIA. Secondly, RIA has a proven record of specialized programming to appropriately receive newcomer ELLs and provide them with trauma-free, safe environment where they can grow and achieve academically, socially, emotionally. It reminds me of my last 10 years where as a gifted, talented teacher, a misunderstood population possibly, until I started to learn more and understand more, and just a parallel world. Can you imagine for a moment that RIA wasn't here? No specially trained staff that has the understanding and experience to help newcomer ELL students. Many who have experienced refugee camp life, wartime trauma, don't speak English. I mean, it's a multilingual program. Don't share the same alphabet even, and very diverse
Mr.
cultural
Donnelly?
backgrounds. Yes.
I'm sorry, your time is up for tonight, but it does sound like you have.
Wow, okay.
Please
Okay.
go ahead and send it to our email if you can. I know you've been in contact with our board office as well.
Thank you. The timing is right for keeping a program that works in Rochester City schools.
Thank you,
for
Mr. Donnelly.
time.
Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Our next speaker is Tiara Grayson, a community member speaking regarding the budget. Tiara is joining us in the room now. It looks like her audio is taking a little while to connect. Okay, I am going to let our next speaker, who is Laura Smith, go ahead in the meantime so that we can, and then we'll circle back around with Tiara. Welcome, Laura. Welcome. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so good evening. My name is Laura Smith. While I have spoken with some of you before as a volunteer with Action for Education Equity, I want to start this evening by stating that the views I share tonight are my own as a parent trying to register my 4-year-old for pre-K for this coming September. So one of the key things I was looking for my daughter in her first school experience was that she would have a Black pre-K teacher. So I looked and I couldn't find one. Some schools had pictures of staff, most didn't. So I asked at central office. The staff there were superbly helpful, but had to be honest that potentially maybe there was only roughly 2, and they couldn't guarantee where they might be teaching. So I looked to see if for the schools that I was really most interested in, if they had Black teachers in later grades, so that at least there would be the potential of her having a Black teacher at some point. And I couldn't find any clear information on that either. But at my first choice, I'm pretty sure there are none. So potentially my daughter could graduate elementary school without ever having a Black teacher. Realistically, unless urgent action is taken, that will be the reality for far too many students in the district. That has been the reality and continues to be the reality year after year, and it's gone on too long. Our students themselves have clearly told us that this needs to change. Now, I really dislike this format because I'm not trying to lecture at you or berate you. In fact, most of you here support changes. I know that. And most of you weren't even around in these roles when previous attempts have been tried. So I just want to throw out all those things about he said, she said, how did we get here? But we're here. And I just want it to be a really intense priority to fix it. So I really just want to ask that when we are looking at our budgets and the money that's coming, that we budget appropriately so that we can do really extensive benchmarking of what is working in other districts in relation to increasing the number of Black teachers and retaining quality Black teachers. And then I want us to be able to do a deep dive into the lessons learned from the previous attempts that have been made to try to diversify. And from that information, like us to come up with quality short and long-term strategies to bring Black teachers for our students. So please, could we make this a significant budgeting priority? Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. We appreciate your comments tonight. I'm going to try again with Tiara from before. Tiara, are you hearing me? It's in the room and audio is connected, but not hearing anything. Tiara? Okay, it looks like we will move on to our next speaker. We had Amy Schramm, a staff member, signed up to speak about the budget. But she is not in the waiting room, so we will go with Ms. Claire Labrosa. Claire, are you with us?
Oh, I'm here.
There you go. Okay, welcome. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Can I ask if Amy Schramm already spoke?
She's not in the waiting room. She hasn't.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. So my name is Claire Labrosa, and I am going to read aloud the Rochester Organization of Rank and File Educators budget response. And this was created by a group of RCSD educators. Over the past decade and a half, Rochester City Schools have been intentionally deprived of funding. This upcoming year, after struggling through a global pandemic, our district has a unique opportunity to start to undo the state's denial of the foundation aid owed to the RCSD for 14 years and the city of Rochester's stagnant RCSD funding for 15 years. RCSD has the highest percentage in Monroe County for economically disadvantaged students, 90%, students with disabilities, 21.4%, English language learners, 15%, and transportation costs per student, $2,225, as well as increasing charter school tuition costs, $95.8 million. The RCSD has been caught in a cycle of underfunding, resulting in massive layoffs of staff and downsizing of schools, specialized programs, extracurricular activities, and other opportunities and resources for students. Superintendent Myers Small and State Monitor Shelley Jallow have approached the 2021-2022 budget from a deficit standpoint. They are quoting low enrollment, disregarding how the pandemic has played a large factor in our pre-K and K enrollment this past year, as well as the loss of programs and opportunities that may lead families to seek alternative education options for their students. They are quoting a student to teacher ratio of 10-to-1 while ignoring the mandated services many teachers provide that prohibit them from teaching full classes, and that specialized programs are required to have smaller class sizes. Educational research tells us that students perform better with smaller class sizes rather than classes filled to the maximum allowed capacity. They are questioning sustainability, not taking into account the fact that we need to invest in the district in order to see improvement and growth. With the federal stimulus money that's being given to the RCSD this year, as well as the newly guaranteed foundation aid from the state, RCSD leadership is in a position to invest these funds in providing enhanced resources and opportunities for our students. We need to provide our students and families with schools that offer them the desired support, enrichment, and opportunity they deserve. The superintendent and district need to be transparent about where the stimulus and foundation aid funds are going and how these funds are going to make positive change in the district. Clarity must be provided as to how funding will be equitably divided among all schools in the district so that all students are receiving the same level of opportunities and resources. We want increased staffing, hire more Boutet support, return hot lunches, hire more counselors, social workers, and members of the Rock Restorative team, invest in recruiting and retaining racially, ethnically, culturally, and linguistically diverse staff, hire more art, music, library, and physical education teachers, hire intervention teachers, extended day and extended year opportunities for enrichment, provide or invest in summer opportunities that include arts enrichment, athletics, internships, community building, and supplementary academic enrichment, begin development to provide year-round arts education in our elementary schools.
Claire? My apologies, your time is up. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you.
Have a good night. I am going to try again with Tiara one more time, and then we will go to our next speaker, Ms. Amy Schramm, who was able to join us. Tiara, can you hear us now? Tiara? No, it looks like we are having quite a bit of technical difficulty with her. So I'm going to go ahead and let Amy Schramm in the room. Amy, can you hear us? Amy? Nope, not getting through to her. Tiara, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so we're gonna take Tiara and then see if Amy is in the room. And then I have one last speaker who was not sure if he would be able to make it, but has been able to make it. So we'll let him go as well. Whenever you're ready, Tiara, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you give me like 10 seconds? Because I'm about to go inside. I'm outside right now.
Okay.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, can you turn your video on?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I demand is fresh, healthy, nutritious, hot school meals, transparency, accountability, and inclusion to all stakeholders, including the community and parents, on any decisions, including money being spent on programs implemented or removed from our schools, teachers, administrators, and support staff that represents the student body, and proportionately hiring of support staff such as trauma counselors, social workers, social emotional support workers, caseworkers, parent liaisons, and one for each grade in each school. More teachers to lessen the load on the teachers to student ratio, to promote healthier learning environments and student-based learning, and more extracurricular activities such as sports, band, music enrichment programs, conflict resolution programs, and leadership programs. But in addition to that, also alternatives to, the methods of discipline that feeds the school to prison pipeline, and constantly suspending students. It's putting these kids who parents they're in broken households, non-nuclear homes where they don't have adequate supervisory because their parents are working numerous jobs to make sure that there's food on their table. And these kids, when they're taken out of schools from learning in regards to suspension and expel, they're stuck to be left on the streets to get into the same crime and the stuff that's out here that furthers, feed the criminal justice system. And so I just ask that the money also gets spent on alternatives to disciplinary actions.
Tiara, is that the rest of your comments, or did you have anything more? Your mic went off. Thank you so much for speaking with the board tonight. We appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night.
You too.
Thanks. All right, I'm going to try again with Amy Schramm. Amy, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Wonderful. Whenever you're ready, can you... There you go. Wonderful.
Hi.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Whenever you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, looks like we lost you again. Amy? Oh.
Okay, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Can you
Go
see
ahead.
me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Sorry about having issues tonight. So yeah, I'm really grateful to be here tonight, and I just want to thank you for your openness to hearing everyone's suggestions. And I know some of us have gathered together, not just as educators in the district, but organizers in the community, to come up with these demands, so to speak, as to like what the district could and should do with the money in the coming months when it does come. And the biggest thing is support staff. We need Boutet, we need RAP, we need all of the kitchen staff, we need good food, we need all of these things that our children desperately deserve. They just deserve it. Looking around at our surrounding districts, we can see how the student success is based on the structure of the school building and all the things that are put into place. And now that we are going to be fully funded and more, there's absolutely no reason why we cannot hire more staff. So I really would like you to, we're hoping that you can stop looking at it coming from a deficit standpoint and more from a positive, we can do this standpoint, re-envisioning the district, reimagining it. What can we do together to make our students' lives at school and at home a community effort to better our students' lives? And so I think my biggest, the biggest thing that I wanted to say tonight was to, step away from that, the negative, deficit, the austerity mindset, to re-envisioning what can we do. And as an art teacher, working in the district as long as I have, I've seen the money, being cut more and more every year, and having, even in my own building, having less and less resources, and parents finding out that students are only getting a half an hour a week for half of a year. They're dumbfounded, they're astounded. They can't believe that the district isn't even giving their students art for a full year. And that's been something that's extremely, it hurts our children on so many levels, because we know that the arts enrich our lives. We all know that, and we all know the studies. And so just the mere fact that visual arts is only given for a half an hour a week, a half of a year, I feel like I know that we can do better in this, and that we can fully fund schools for a full year in this area. And so I'm putting that out there on the table also. And yeah, I thank you for your time, and I really hope you take it into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. We appreciate your comments tonight. Thank you very much. President White, we have a John Boutet. He contacted the board to speak tonight, but he wasn't sure he was going to be able to make it, but it does seem like he is able to. Mr. Boutet, are you there with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Mr. Boutet will be speaking about local busing. Go ahead, sir, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, one of the things that we've been talking with the school district for about 10 years now, and it's really been brought up many times before that, is the need to have more local involvement in our schools. The 1.5 mile limit that currently drives many parents to send their child at a school that's 1.5 miles away from home is really hurting the cohesiveness of the neighborhoods around our schools. Parents are not always able to get to the school when they have an event to attend, and this is something that's just been dragging on way too long. It's a perfect way to destroy a district is keep the parents separated from the schools, and we need to change the way things are being done. We had the Southwest Common Council Education Committee had a meeting with the mayor back, I think it was January 14th, and talking with her and Katerina Leona Menino, it looked like there was a chance of using child safety zones as a way to approach changing the way we handle local busing, trying to use the equity issue as a way to force the hand of the state, I guess. I hope that you will be, she was going to be talking with the superintendent this week, I believe. I just want to make sure that everybody is paying attention to the fact we may have a way to break through on this finally. And if that doesn't work, we need to change the way things are going. We keep talking about the fact that we have systemic racism and that's been destroying the city. And this particular issue, the 1.5 mile busing, is working in that fashion. It's keeping parents and schools apart, and we shouldn't be doing that. So please look into making changes this year. It's long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boutet. We're glad we were able to have you in the room tonight. White, that is the end of our speakers portion for the evening.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I did note that the superintendent, Dr. Myers-Small, asked if she could have a brief moment to recognize some staff members. So we want to take the time to do that now. Leslie?
Thank you, President White, and good evening to you and all of our commissioners, as well as Dr. Nelms and our staff. So on May 1st, we celebrated National Principals Day. May 3rd through 7th, this week is it's Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week. And on Thursday, May 6th, it's National Nurse Appreciation Day. So I just wanted to share on behalf of the Board of Education, myself and Dr. Nelms, we just wanted to say how much we do appreciate all that our staff do, the things that they do that we know, and more importantly, the things that we'll never know. And so please know that you're appreciated, and we thank you. Especially this week, but all year round, we are very appreciative of your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie, for recognizing our staff. We try to do it as frequently as we can, but every once in a while, these national holidays come up, and to tell you the truth, I don't know who makes them up, but Love Your Brother and Sister Day and the other day I saw one, National Siblings Day, and I never heard of that before. But we should always be thankful for our staff and appreciate you. And that's something that we should be doing 365 days a year. But the board thanks you for recognizing that very invaluable part of our operation, which is our staff. Next item on the agenda is special meeting discussion items. Commissioner Powell, there's a number of first readings of policies that we have to, by our bylaws, have to go through today. Commissioner Powell?
Yeah, is Rahima on?
I am Commissioner Powell.
Okay. I'm just, because I can't simultaneously look at board docs on the screen. If you could make sure we're on track here. I'm aware that the grants policy has cleared the policy committee and is ready for to be presented as a discussion item. This is a brand new policy that's essentially driven by the fiscal monitor's report. That is the entire policy. It did undergo a little bit of review and recommendation around the nature of the report, but you'll recall that last meeting we had a presentation from the grants department on what they anticipated the reporting to look like. Are there any questions or comments on the reporting of grant awards policy? If there are no questions, we'll move along.
We have our hand
Commissioner
raised.
Clark.
Yeah.
I was just waiting for folks to pipe up. Let's see, the first hand is, I don't know if they came up in order or not. First,
I think it was Commissioner Clark.
yes, and then yourself, Commissioner LeBron.
Thank you. I had one question regarding the policy, and that was the addition where it indicated shall be presented to the Finance Committee. And my question is, since we're looking at reducing the number of meetings and, moving away, and I'm assuming moving away from meetings of the whole, why is it only the Finance Committee and not the full board?
Well, I'll take a stab at that, but then I'll turn it over to Commissioner LeBron. Generally, reports would go out to all board members on a quarterly basis, but as a matter of it being a topic of discussion, we have to focus on one place. And even if we return to less frequent meetings and suppose we return to a 3-person committee, anyone can attend any committee, whether they're a voting member or not. So in the case of receiving a report from the administration, that shouldn't be a hindrance. It would just call upon non-committee board members to be proactive to, if they want to participate in active discussion about the report. Commissioner LeBron, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think I would add, there's a couple of proposals that we're going to be discussing tonight, and one of those would potentially be moving finance to every other month and then also attaching it to the board business meeting. So Commissioner Clark, that was my proposal, but also I do think this type of report could easily, even if it goes through finance, still be presented to the full board as a whole on record through the board business meeting. So I'm okay with the language on that. And I don't know if that answers your question, and then I can ask my question on what's on the policy.
Yes, it does, because I just wanted to make sure that the full board got a chance to read it also. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And then Commissioner Powell, my question is just clarity on the last bullet point that says staff oversight helps support the management of district revenue and expenses. In the report, are we asking that they list the staff that are involved in the grants? Is that what that sentence means?
I believe so.
Okay. I would just like to see that just worded with just a little bit more clarity, because it's a little bit confusing as to what that means. But that's what I'm assuming that it means, that we're asking in this report for the quarterly grants that we have the purpose, the amount, the duration, the scope of work, the outcomes, the alignment of district priorities, and then the staff that's involved in those grants or overseeing the grants.
If you would like to propose, to craft a substitute bullet, that we can make changes to the policy without restarting the clock. So if you can get language together, we can put it in our next policy committee meeting.
Okay, Will do. Thank you.
Commissioner Powell, just briefly,
Yeah.
I just want to I drafted this, as you know. I took this directly out of the independent monitor report. These bullets were word for word what's in there, and obviously, you know, no problem working on clarity. Yeah, I can just check back with Dr. Jallow even and just try and recommend if what the intent of that was to indicate the staff who are responsible for that particular grant, or if there was something else, and we could clarify that point. I'm happy to work on the language on that.
Yes, please. Either way, it's gonna, any changes will have to funnel through you as the liaison to the policy committee. So whatever we can do to add clarity is good with me.
Okay, I'll take care of that.
Okay. Rahima, what's the next policy on the docket?
So our next policy I'm going to bring up is been renamed. It is the policy management policy, which is.
I'm sorry, I did have a question. I don't, my hand was raised, but then maybe I did something to take it down. So may I ask my question, Commissioner Powell?
Yes, please do.
So, you know, our concern has been that when we receive these awards, once the grant has expired, they tend to go into our general, those positions tend to go into our operating budget. And my concern is that we don't have that grant any longer, or the grants any longer, but then we include them in our operating budget. Should there be some language in the policy that limits the ability of the district to incorporate that money or those resources that were initially funded by a grant, but now it's funded by, have been funded by our operating budget? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I appreciate where your concern is coming from. If Rahima, could you put that policy back up again? The key to this one is that this is grants. This is a reporting. This focuses only on the reporting of grant. So our oversight of what happens after the grant expires, I think falls into our budget process. And all I can recommend is that board members who are concerned about that ask very pointed questions about programs that are grant funded, what's happening to them when the grant expires during the budget process.
Okay.
Because you're right that administration very often, year after year, will try to keep programs going even after funding disappears. And sometimes it's worthwhile and it's worthy of continuing to pay for out of general A funds. But the key is the administration needs to show us that it is worthy of being kept.
Thank you.
Beatrice, your hand went up again?
Yes, it did. Thank you. I actually do agree with Vice President Elliott here on like the soft money into hard lines without ever having clarity. And although, yes, we can have pointed questions, we would do these reports, look at the duration and know that there's an ending coming. But I personally would like to see the ending, what the end date would be under duration, and then if the administration would have a plan or make recommendations to move it into the general funds. Because in the past, that has been done without evidence of success. Let me just put that out there. We've had these conversations, so I don't want to reiterate them, and not with this administration, but to avoid doing that repeatedly over and over and over, because the board makeup will continue to change over the course of the next couple of years. And I do think it would be wise of us to have under duration that if a grant is coming to an end, that the administration presents a a clear indication on whether they're going to move it through the general funds and ask the board's support, or do that same report if they're just going to let it go. But either way, even through this policy, I would also recommend that we discuss the transition plans when grants end, because that's something that we have not had great oversight over. And it is impactful. There are some grants that were extremely successful that we just, when the money ran out, we didn't do anything for it. And then the way that that lands or had landed in the school district, but also into this community, is that, hey, we had a great program, the money ran out, and they didn't care about keeping it moving because they didn't have the funds to do so. And we may genuinely not have the dollars to do so either. I think there's two sides to this. So if there was a way to expand under duration to show like when the grant's going to end, what the administration's plan or vision is, or recommendation to move it into a hard line budget, I would like to see that during the, and it could be at that year-end finance report too, Commissioner Powell. I think I'm open to that time frame, but
so
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm, and this, we may need to talk about this offline, but I do think that there probably need to be a policy around this. And that may be, Commissioner Powell, something to discuss in another meeting, but that brings up the fact that, you know, the district has been known in the past, you know, to incorporate these programs into the operating budget. And we just need to know about that, you know. So I think that approval needs to come from the board with regard to that, or some conversation. And it needs to be, in my view, in some kind of policy format, so that it is documented that the board needs to understand what the district may be recommended in terms of retaining a program with that would be using operating dollars, operating budget dollars. Thank you.
Sure, I hear you. And I'll revise my previous response by saying, rather than waiting until budget season, when these reports begin to hit our finance committee agenda, if you know that would be the time to ask questions about and what happens when this ends. So I don't know that it has to be explicit in the policy. What we do need to do is be faithful to asking the questions. And I would just recommend that we see this policy through to a vote next at the business meeting, and give it time to find out how well it works and whether the report is sufficient to trigger those questions, or whether we need to be more specific in our policy.
Respectfully, I do think we probably need to be more specific, because people change. You know, board members change, district staff change. So, you know, I don't need to talk about it any further, Commissioner, but we could talk about it at another time offline. Thank you.
Yeah, let's hear what Dr. Jallo has to say about that when she speaks with our general counsel, and see if there's a recommendation for further change.
Sure.
I don't see any other hands. I guess we're ready to move on to the next policy. The next policy is our, it's been renamed the policy management policy, because when we combined 3 separate policies together, the title became very unwieldy. But you've seen this in a number of configurations. The most visible part of this change is going to be that instead of referring to the stages as information, discussion, and action steps, we're going to be referring to them as first, second, and third readings, which is a language that's almost universally used and understood in all other government organizations. And everything else about this, notwithstanding that there are many changes that appear in the track changes form, are simply the product of combining 3 different policies and a regulation into a single document. Any questions on this one? No, I don't see any hands going up. So that one will be ready to vote on in our business meeting. Rahima, what's next?
That's it for,
That's good. We have quite a large packet for us the next go round. We're starting to see product come through our subcommittee work. So that concludes this portion of the meeting, President.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. I would just note that it appears that we're behind schedule. It is now 6:24. The agenda says we should be almost completing governance at this time. However, what the schedule doesn't tell us is that we had 6 speakers. The agenda says about 2 minutes. It looks like 3 minutes for speakers. So we don't ever know exactly how many speakers are going to be. So I just don't want folks to worry that we've been unnecessarily talking too long or asking too many questions. In fact, we're off track as a reflection of the number of speakers we had. So let's keep moving on, though, with the understanding that we need to stay on track. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is many people don't know this. We had a retreat this past weekend, and we've had many discussions even before the retreat about making sure we keep our time commitments. So having said that, the next item on the agenda is resolutions for consideration. There are 2 that are up for today. Let's begin with 792. This is a resolution to amend certain aspects of the SEG Appendix A. You all may recall that the superintendent discussed the specifics of this with us in executive session as it related to a particular person. If we can go back into executive session at the end of this meeting, if there are specific questions that relate to a particular person. Wanted to know if well, I'll tell you what, let me go ahead and get a motion to advance for discussion resolution 792.
I move it.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. I heard Commissioner Adams second that. Any questions or comments regarding resolution 792? I'm looking at my list. Give you guys a chance to press those buttons. And I'm scrolling. I'm on my phone, by the way. So I'm having to scroll up and down, and I don't see any hands being raised. Oops, Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble. I'm a little ill this evening. So I'm having trouble. I just need a summary of the what's being discussed. So we might need to go into executive session for that.
Dr. Myers-Small, could you remind us what this particular resolution is about? It's about SEG Appendix A, which would add a particular position. You described that for us. Would you describe it for us again, please? What the position is?
Yes, this would be an SEG member who would oversee innovation. Sorry, did I get cut off?
Yes.
I'm sorry. This would be a SEG position that would oversee receivership and innovation. As you know, we have 12 schools in receivership and continue to be very concerned about that.
Thank you. That's what I was wondering. Thank you.
Sure.
You're muted.
Looks like I got muted. Sorry about that. I'm looking through my list.
That wasn't me.
No, I realize that. Let's see, I'm going through the list and I don't see any hands being raised. So if there are no further questions or comments regarding resolution 792, why don't we go ahead and take a vote? All those in favor of resolution 792, which is a resolution to amend our SEG rules and regulations, particularly Appendix A, indicate by saying yes or aye, and making sure your computer screen is on. Aye.
Aye.
I only heard 2 ayes, mine and Commissioner Clark's.
Aye.
Can we do a roll call only because I'm only catching people are stepping on each other.
That is fine. Just remind my colleagues that it goes much more efficiently and quite effectively if you just make sure your camera's on and just say Aye. But we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote. Let me pull up my screen to make sure I include all my colleagues. Let's begin with Vice President Elliott,
Aye.
Commissioner Powell,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Malloy,
Aye.
Commissioner LeBron,
Nay.
myself as an aye. Did I miss anybody? I'm sorry, I'm going through this list. I got Commissioner Malloy. Yeah, I think I got Commissioner Adams. I'm sorry, Commissioner Adams. I didn't see your name on the list. Commissioner Adams.
Aye.
Yep. So it appears that the ayes have it. Madam Superintendent, your request to amend SEG Appendix A has been approved.
Thank you very much.
All right, next on the agenda for resolutions for consideration is Resolution 790. Commissioner Powell, you had a PowerPoint regarding OPEB
Yes,
resolution.
Callie, want to drive it?
Yes, I'll drive it. I do have a question if you want to lift it from the table.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I'm sorry. First of all, I need a motion to lift the resolution 790 from the table.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. All right, the resolution 790 having been lifted from the table, Commissioner Powell, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. So far, we've had a lot of discussion about whether this topic should be discussed. And after a whole long series of meetings with the comptroller, I think it's unanimous that the topic is worthy of discussion. To initiate that discussion, I put forward a resolution that would essentially be a starting point. Now, I'll tell you now that in conversations with the CFO and superintendent as recently as 3 o'clock today, we negotiated to a place that's different from what my resolution states. So at the end of this presentation, I'd like to put forward a motion to substitute the resolution that we tabled last meeting for a resolution that includes the language that the administration agreed to. So next slide, please. The bottom line up front is that changes in the past have been made to the committed fund balances without board approval. And committed funds, very specifically, unlike all other funds, require board level approval through resolution. And so we need to make a decision to as to what the appropriate committed fund balance level is. And I'm recommending that we partially restore it this fiscal year and strive to fully restore it in subsequent years. Next slide. And why now? Well, it was partly driven by the CAFR. Last year was my first year as a member of the audit committee and first year as chair of the audit committee. And considerable energy went into discussion about what the appropriate fund balance levels were. And so I did some research and to find out how it changed over time. Next slide. We had the comptroller's audit focused on the fund balance levels. Next slide. And the fiscal monitors. This is language lifted right out of those reports. Next slide. And during the CAFR, comparisons were made between our fund balance levels and Buffalo and Syracuse. You'll actually see that they both have restricted funds that Buffalo in particular that far exceeds our own. Next slide. So with all of that behind us, I submitted these questions to the board question log. Next slide. The most important takeaway from this slide is the answer to questions 2 and 3, specifically saying that the administration needed additional guidance from the Board of Education. So this is an attempt to provide that guidance. Next slide. I'm going to show you some slides of the committed funds and show them graphically. Trust me, this will go a lot faster than you might think. Show you some slides about how the auditors have recognized our OPEB in past CAFRs, the resolutions that have been used over time, and finally my recommended next steps. Next slide. This is more for your reference. I'm not going to talk to every point in this slide, but just to show this is the timeline. Next slide. And these are the fund balance levels. You can see that they were pretty constant. The top slide is all general fund balances together. The black line in the middle is the total committed funds. That's the total of OPEB, workers' compensation, and insurance. And it was pretty steady right up until the financial crisis of 2017, 2018. The middle graph is a breakout of those funds that I just described, workers' comp, OPEB, and insurance claims, along with the health insurance rate stabilization fund. And the bottom slide shows the percentage of fund balance, our fund balance as a percentage of our operating expenses. And you can see there that they held pretty steadily and certainly within the policy ranges right up until the financial crisis. Next slide. So this is what the fund balances looked like in the past, over the past 6 years. As you can see, the fund balance for OPEB was $2,889,000 and change right up until the fund balance, right up until the fiscal crisis, and dropped first to 4 million and then to 0, and only partially restored. Next slide. This is the language of the CAFR that basically says we have been a pay-as-you-go, but the auditors specifically call out that that we had this additional fund, and they called it out as essentially as a good thing. Next slide. Now this resolution from May 2012 is the resolution that created these committed funds. I've highlighted the OPEB in red just so that you can see. Next slide. The OSC guidance came out in 2010 that essentially suggests that in New York State, it might not be a good idea to have committed funds, but very specifically says if the governing body has not delegated the authority to assigned amounts, then assigned is appropriate. Up until our last policy update, we did in fact assign the authority to the superintendent to create assigned fund balances. So for as long as the superintendent had delegated authority, the use of committed funds was almost essential to create a board level authority. Next slide. Okay, this resolution shows how workers' comp level, the funding level changed. The language specifically uncommitted 775,000 from the fund. But if we went back to the table, you'll see that the workers' comp fund dropped a lot more than 775,000. And I could not find any resolution after this one to support those actions. It's almost like the administration interpreted this resolution as authority to change balances on its own without board authority, and that simply runs contrary to the very purpose of committed funds. But it does provide guidance on what the threshold of workers' comp should be, and that's something that perhaps should go into a fund balance policy. Next slide. This is the resolution from 2008 that while it does not specifically set the level of funding, it refers back to the budget, which is, in my opinion, kind of a sloppy way of doing things. But more to the point, this resolution promulgated by the administration provides the guidelines for what an appropriate funding level should be. In this case, an amount not to exceed two subsequent fiscal years worth of actual claims expenses. Now, the funding back in 2011 was, it wasn't an arbitrary amount. It reflected the actual expenses for 1 year of funding. So my initial resolution that I brought some time ago and was tabled till tonight was to restore the funding level to 1 year's worth of it. I'm sorry, to the original funding level, understanding that that doesn't even bring it up to a single year's worth of expenses. Costs have risen. A single year of expenses would be wouldn't be 21 million, it would be 28 million. So my resolution sought to make a small step towards a floor level of funding. And I'll talk to that a little bit later. Next slide. Another slide that the language changed in 2008 around OPEB, but the practice did not. We're still self-funded, and the language that's required in audits, external audits, has changed, but the fact remains that we are a pay-as-you-go system. Next slide. This is the resolution I brought back in February around health insurance. Notice that this provided guidelines for the superintendent and the Joint Health Insurance Committee. That language came directly from the MOU. I'm sorry, the Memorandum of Agreement. But in truth, it's language that belongs in a policy, not in a resolution. Next slide. I think I've spoken to all these points. This slide is more just to summarize what I've already said. Next slide. So I'm recommending that we add funds to OPEB effective June 30th. My initial recommendation, as I said, was for us to bring it up to previous levels and then work towards the floor of 1 year's expenses by the end of next year. Since then, the superintendent and CFO and I have spoken, and we believe that adding 7 million instead of 10 million and change would still be an adequate step in that direction. And since the budget did not rely on the capital fund that was set up as an assigned fund, the idea would be to unassign that fund and then repurpose it to the OPEB fund. But the next recommendation is that the language in all of those resolutions I just showed you that contain guidelines for appropriate funding levels need to be rolled into a policy. And when we were talking about the fund balance policy before, this didn't come up. And I don't think a proper review of the state of those committed funds had been done, and the fact that the language had been confined to resolutions this whole time, that there's no language in anywhere else that supports what the appropriate funding levels should be. So I've drafted a new version of a fund balance policy that carries the language from these three resolutions into policy. It does not mean that that's what we have to do. We need to talk through each of those points, but we can do it in the context of a policy review. The whole of the financial policy packets are going to be moving through the administration and the finance committee in the next couple of months. So this is a timely discovery and a timely opportunity to introduce those into policy using the systems that Rahima helped to develop, to have them circulate through the administration and make sure we get total buy-in. And then once the policy is updated, we can work on clear practices for reviewing the data. The data comes to us in the the financial reports that are delivered to us end of November, first part of December every year. They include actuarial data that can help us make the decisions about what the appropriate funding levels should be, what the actual dollar value should be, and we should be in the practice of passing a resolution setting the new fund balance levels in December of each year, so that the administration can then use that resolution as an assumption for building their budgets each and every year. Next slide. That's it. That's my presentation. So,
do you want to take questions from people?
Sure.
So why don't you monitor the participant list and see if there are any questions?
Yep. So far, I don't see anything so far. Commissioner Clark?
Yes, let me unmute first. Well, number one, I'm glad to hear that there's been a meeting and you've come to a resolution, because I agree 100% that there should be a policy and there should also be annual resolutions as it relates to other post-employment benefits. But what I also believe is we need to make sure that whatever policy that we put in place is not fixed in stone, that it's not something that the majority of the board cannot, it needs to give the majority of the board the right to vote it down to make changes based on conditions, because we know conditions change year after year after year. And since the original policy is roughly 12 years old, we do need to have that discussion on what needs to be in the policy. But I agree 100%. We need policy and we need annual resolutions to determine the amount of set aside.
Thank you. To that point, I'll say to the group what I said in our phone conversation. Imagine in a couple of years' time, the federal government passes a single payer or Medicare for all healthcare system. Suddenly OPEB would be absolutely unnecessary. A health insurance rate stabilization fund would be absolutely unnecessary if the burden of these costs were shifted to a single payer system. So yes, I can imagine scenarios where appropriate levels of funding would change. And that's just the first example that came to my mind. Other questions? So,
Commissioner Powell?
Yes, Cynthia.
Yeah, I'm still actually in listening mode. And so what I need to understand, and I'd like to have the superintendent and the CFO to chime in here to where we are with this. And is this something that you're asking for that we vote on tonight, or we vote into our next business meeting? What are you requesting at this point, Commissioner Powell? And then I need to hear, as I said, from the superintendent and also from the CFO about, I guess, for lack of a better term, the middle of the road on this, and where we need to be with it. So if I can just stop talking and just, because I need more. And quite frankly, let me just say this. If I were to vote on this tonight, I will be voted on it in listening to what other people have to say about it, because this is not an area that I'm still clear about. And it would not be a vote where I'm competent on. So that's where, I need to have the superintendent and the CFO to be able to weigh in on this, to give me a better idea of the way in which I need to vote.
Madam Superintendent? There you are, unmuted. Go ahead.
I'll start, and then I'll have Carlene. Commissioner Powell Commissioner Powell, Carlene, and I did have a good conversation because we weren't on the same page when we started. I think for me, Vice President Elliott, I just was concerned about the expediency with which we needed to move. I just wanted to slow down a little bit, and I know Carlene agrees with me. The friendly amendment was landing on the $7 million figure, but I just was a little concerned about the speed, right, and the rush.
So where are we with that? Is this something that we're voting on for this month, or are we
delaying?
Cynthia, to your point, the first thing I would like to do is make the substitution and get the new language on the table. And then if you like, we can table it for our next board meeting. We have essentially, Callie, could you put the language of the walk-on resolution up for folks so that you can see, and scroll down to the first resolved statement, because this is where the change resides. So why don't I do it as a motion, Mr. President? I move that resolution 790 the language before us be substituted for resolution 790.
All right, you've made that motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. I do see, Commissioner Powell, that Commissioner Adams has raised his hand, so that can begin the discussion.
Okay. Commissioner Adams? While he's, there you are. Go ahead.
Discussion is what I was hoping for. But you're talking about a walk-on. It seems like we're rushing through this. And I really didn't even understand it really good the first time. And now with the adjustment, I still
Commissioner Adams, I anticipate
just not prepared to vote tonight.
I did anticipate that, but I want to make sure that if we table it, that we are tabling the version that the superintendent, the CFO, and I are all agreeable to. So I am amenable to a motion to table, but I'd like for us first to get this version into the pipeline.
All right.
Okay. So what the first resolved statement says is that effective June 30th, in other words, we have until the end of June to take formal action. But effective June 30th, the assigned capital fund of $7 million would be unassigned and repurposed to add $7 million to the OPEB committed. That is the change, and that's what's been moved and seconded.
So Commissioner Powell,
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at, we're talking about June 30th, 2020, right? And that's the amount that was spent in 2020. Do we have a projection of the amount that would be spent June 2021?
We'll know that for certain when we see the CAFR for 2021, which is generally around November. So what this, and you're right to focus on those numbers, because ultimately we should be funding OPEB something, I mean, with the, when and if this resolution passes, our OPEB funding level will be 17 million. We'll still have $11 million gap to close if there are no changes in our actual expenditures. So we can reasonably expect it to be even higher than 28 million by the end of the year. But we won't really have unaudited numbers until we see the CAFR in November. And that's really the time when we should be making these decisions for all of our fund balances, is when the CAFR is fresh and new in our hands.
Okay.
So we can expect to see another change come November, December of 2021.
Okay.
Commissioner Powell, I see Commissioner Malloy has had her hand raised.
Yes.
Thank you. And forgive me in advance for my simplicity here. I'm not feeling well. So I just need clarity on two things. So you're just asking for a substitution to the amount added to the OPEB fund? That's
right.
Okay.
We're substituting this language right here in the first whereas first resolved.
Sorry. And you've spoken to the administration and they are agreeable to that change?
I'll ask the superintendent to weigh in again.
Thanks.
I don't want to speak for the administration. Either Madam Superintendent or Ms. Pierce, you want to give assurances or not, as the case may be?
I apologize. I had to step away for just a quick second. So Commissioner Malloy, if you'd ask again, I'm sorry.
I was just well, the first question that I asked was just for clarity about what was being proposed here. So it was the first, which was answered already, but in case you missed it, I asked if this substitution was to change the amount added to the OPEB fund.
Mm-hmm.
My second question, which was, I guess, more for you, was, is the administration agreeable to that change?
So again, it's a friendly amendment that I can certainly agree to. I just was concerned about the rush of the June 30th. I wanted a little bit more time. That's all.
So, Commissioner Powell, what about the June 30th date?
Well, that we don't have to vote on it tonight if delaying the vote gives people a higher level of comfort. However, the action really does have to happen when we, at the point where we're closing the books for this fiscal year. And if we don't move funds this year, then we're going to have to try to make up the whole of the gap in November, December, when we consider this in the context of the CAFR.
So is there an issue with that? Won't we have the funding that additional funding where we can do it at that time? Or am I not asking the right question?
Well, that's a valid question.
Okay.
But I would say we also have the funds now. Look at that resolution again. The last year, in response to the financial management report from our monitor, $7 million was set aside in an assigned fund to pay for an upgrade to PeopleSoft. Well, when the budget was put together for 21-22, the administration had chosen to pay for the whole of the PeopleSoft upgrade with 21-22 revenues. That means that this unassigned fund is no longer needed for the purpose it was created and is therefore available without changing anything else about our budget, or without tapping into any of our unassigned fund balances or anything. This is funding that's poised and ready and available and not going to be used for any other purpose. So, Cynthia, I can see that you're still ill at ease, as is the superintendent. So what I would ask is that we have a vote on the substitution, because that is the motion on the floor. And then if you feel the need to move to table, then at least we'll be tabling the right thing.
Commissioner Powell, a point of order. Wouldn't it be, you or my colleagues or the parliamentarian can correct me if I'm wrong, wouldn't it be just simpler to withdraw 790, give this new one a new number, and then table it? Because I'm concerned that people in their, the lack of a better phrase, confusion about this or lack of understanding about it, are being asked to vote on something that they don't understand. All I think that needs to be done is withdraw 790, give a new number to this revised resolution, and then move to table it. This way people wouldn't, you know what I'm saying? People wouldn't be forced to vote on amending a resolution that some have indicated, including Commissioner Adams, Vice President, are not at a comfort level just yet. So you put your new one before them now, you withdraw the old one, put the new one before them now, and then table it to give them the time to look at the new one.
Well, I don't think that would help me. Mine is a learning issue. And even if they put another policy, another resolution, I would still have the same issue. So I don't have a problem with us amending this one and approving this one and then tabling the resolution itself, not voting on it. So a new resolution is not going to help me. I just have to continue to listen to what's being said so that I can determine how I'm going to vote on it. But that's based on my knowledge set and not on necessarily a new resolution.
But here's my point, and I understand if that doesn't cover your concern. Here's my point. We have a resolution. Anybody can write a resolution, superintendent, board member, and put it before the body. You all are being asked at this particular point, and I know it's just an ask, to approve the change in a resolution that hasn't even been approved by the board. It's just a resolution. So the cleanest way to do this is to withdraw 790 and just give this new one a new number and then table it. We don't need to amend something that the body hasn't even approved. That's what I'm saying, Commissioner Powell. Does that make any sense to you or to our parliamentarian?
President White, or let me just offer, that's even, that may, like, if she's going to withdraw, which is her right now because it hasn't been voted on, it doesn't really make sense to put it in and then table it. She should just withdraw it and reintroduce it at another meeting. If that's how, I mean, honestly, if that's how that's going to work, that's cleaner.
Sure.
You know,
so you're saying there's no need to even table. So she withdraws the 790 and then distributes, everybody has it now, the current one, and then that comes up at another meeting whenever she brings it up. Is that what you're saying? Don't even.
Correct. Yeah, that would be cleaner.
That'd be fine.
The way you've laid,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Mr. President, the way you've laid it out would be 2 or 3 steps instead of, it actually adds steps to the process.
So what about Steve's suggestion, the parliamentarian suggestion, that you just withdraw it, which is what I suggested, and then at another time, I was suggesting you put it before the body now and then table it. But what Steve is suggesting is just, everybody's got it now, and then at another meeting, we vote on it.
The fact that this would be a substitution has the same effect what you just said. It just changes this one paragraph. So I would just assume that we just move forward to a vote on that. I'm asking you not to ask me to withdraw it.
Okay, that's fine. But I guess, Steve, what I would ask is, and you just correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know how we substitute something that the board hasn't even approved. It's simply, I would think that she could just do that herself, right? I'm changing my resolution.
That's the way it's always done. You don't do a substitution for something that's passed.
Right.
You only do a substitution for something that's pending.
She's asking to make a friendly amendment to something that's already been tabled. That's kind of changing the procedural piece of this. So if she's not willing to withdraw it, then you probably do need to vote to let her amend what's before the body, and then somebody can move to table it again.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
That's fine. Willa, I'm looking, I see Commissioner Malloy has raised her hand.
That too, yeah.
I just wanted to say I would prefer that we go ahead and vote for the substitution, just to simplify the process.
Okay. Any other, I'm looking at the participant list. I don't see any other questions or comments, Commissioner Powell. So there is a motion before the body to substitute the language as described by Commissioner Powell from substitute the current language that she's drafted from 790 and place it in place of the language that's in 790 now. Are there any other questions or comments before we go to vote on that resolution, that motion? I'm looking, I don't see any. All right, so all those in favor of substituting the language as described by Commissioner Powell for the language that's already in 790, please indicate by making sure your video is on and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Please, colleagues, make sure you articulate your voice vote.
My vote is nope.
Did you hear me?
Okay. Just the ayes at this particular point, and then we'll get to the no votes. So, Madam Clerk, what have you recorded as the ayes?
I recorded Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Malloy, and Commissioner Powell. I haven't heard yet from.
I said aye.
Yeah, and
I said aye.
Aye as well. Commissioner Elliott, I never heard you. You would.
I said aye.
Aye. Okay. All
Hear
right.
from me? Can you
Did
hear
not
me?
hear from you, Commissioner Adams.
I said aye. About 5.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, and the nays?
I'm a nope. Thank you.
It seems, Madam Clerk, the ayes have it. Commissioner Powell, the language has been substituted. Is there going to be a motion to table?
I leave it to those who would desire so.
Yeah, let me make a motion to table resolution 790 until, we need to put a date on it, correct? Is it for a month?
The next business meeting?
Yes. Which is when?
That is May 27th.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a motion to table to
second
May
that motion.
22nd, and it's been seconded by Commissioner LeBron. Motion to table goes directly to a vote. All those in favor of tabling the motion for the purpose of giving colleagues an opportunity to further examine the amendments proposed that have just been made, the substitution's just been made, indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Seems the ayes have it. If you all don't have, and I'm pretty sure you do, because I know Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Powell is that diligent. If you don't have copies of the
He froze.
newly resolution, make sure you litigate or discuss all these issues at our meetings. You have every right to contact Commissioner Powell, the superintendent, have those discussions that
Maybe you need, Van, if you can hear us, we can't hear you and you're frozen. President White. President White. Vice President Elliott.
Yeah. So what's the next item on the agenda, Kalia?
That's, I do see
Commissioner Clark has a question.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Vice President Elliott. My question is the fact that we have really wrestled with this this resolution, and I think we really need to come to a conclusion. Should we really be looking at the policy and changing the policy so that we get the flexibility we need? Because, and Commissioner Powell can correct me, but even if we made this move and we approve this, we will still be below the 100%. I mean, I can't figure out what we're going to accomplish by doing it this way if our policy is saying it's got to be at least 1 year, no more than 2 years. So it seems like we need to really take a look at that policy and see what adjustments or changes we can make to the policy so that we can move ahead as a cohesive unit, because I would really love to see administration and board on the same page on this.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Commissioner Clark. But here's the thing, the policy right now is silent to any such guidelines. Right now, the guidance is scattered across resolutions going back, to 2011. So the work of the policy committee, we need to bring this particular policy back, contemplate what guidelines have been already issued through resolution, and when it's in the subcommittee stage, that is to say where the administration has their hands on it and is making recommendations, that would be the appropriate time for them to provide their expertise on what they think are appropriate levels, and that those would be what gets codified into the next version of our policy. Rather than the guidance that currently exists in the various resolutions that exist.
Let me interrupt, and I apologize that my video got cut off, but I did want to say we've tabled this. What I was trying to say before I got cut off was that please take the time to have these very important discussions offline, so that, as I did hear Commissioner Clark say, so that we can move on this issue one way or the other. You have the period of time between which now and the time that the resolution will be lifted from the table, to have those discussions, talk to Commissioner Powell, talk to amongst yourselves, talk to the superintendent, so that when we have our meeting where it's lifted from the table, we can have some conversation. And as Commissioner Clark, and I know Commissioner Powell wants, so that we can move on this once and for all. So thank you, Commissioner Powell, for your diligence and your perseverance. We'll get this resolved and addressed one way or the other and the intention is for that to be at our next meeting. Okay, we do have to move on, colleagues. We still have a very full agenda. The next matter that we have to consider is the governance matters, and that is going to be chaired by our Commissioner Malloy. The gavel is yours.
Thank you, President White. Again, I just want to reiterate, I'm really not feeling very well this evening, so I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. So good evening to everybody, Dr. Myers-Small, Dr. Jallo, my executive cabinet members, fellow board members, and those of you from the community who are listening in this evening. Just to quickly summarize, board governance deals directly with how we conduct ourselves and monitor our actions as board members. And the governance committee oversees training and professional development to enhance our ability to perform our roles as commissioners. Additionally, governance facilitates the orientation of our new members with our board staff. And as a board, we are additionally charged with supervising and evaluating board staff. Finally, we are committed to organizing board retreats for ongoing professional development related to our interpersonal relationships, and we will continue to take input and recommendations from our state monitor, Dr. Shelley Jallo, to develop adequate governance policy to help us better meet these district goals. So first and foremost, we're going to hold off on the approval of the minutes from our April 6th governance COW meeting until next Tuesday's meeting on May 11th, so as to give our board staff a bit more time to review and update these. So first on our agenda tonight is the board meeting reduction plan. As you know, we don't meet often enough. I would love to see us meet even more frequently. And I'm pausing here for all of you to start laughing, but I guess humor doesn't translate well via Zoom, so that did not go over as planned. You can imagine what I'm like in the classroom with my corny jokes. That was supposed to make you all laugh. In all seriousness, I'd like to help lead a board discussion on a proposal to reduce how often we meet. Our current format, and thanks for pulling that up, Kalia. Our current format has us meeting as a committee of the whole. And for those of you watching this evening, we often refer to our meeting structure by using the COW acronym, which stands for Committees or Committee of the Whole. And so we're not talking about actual cows here or bovines. It just means that we all publicly meet as a group for our individual meetings. We switched to this structure about 1.5 years ago, and I believe that was prior to my joining the board. Our current setup has us meeting 4 times a month on Tuesday evenings and a business meeting every 4th Thursday. Most of our meetings are anywhere from 3 to 4 hours in length. Tonight might be one of those meetings. They often run longer if you consider the time that we spend in executive session afterwards, or simply due to the presentations and ensuing discussions, and they can be robust for sure. Under the state monitor's academic plan, there's been a call to reduce the number of meetings that we have. So why are we considering this now after just having switched back 1.5 years ago? So we as a board are really trying to better align ourselves with board goals, as well as align with the state monitor's plan. Under the state monitor's plan, it was recommended that we make better use of board docs as a board, just to be more efficient, as well as to reduce the amount of executive sessions that we recess into if information can be provided in a more efficient manner. Additionally, by considering a reduction of overall meetings, we will be addressing overall commissioner awareness of committee action items and decisions. So our board staff, board officers, and administration have helped to develop various proposals to address, and I know some of you were asked about this, how to best address 2 of the biggest concerns. The first is, of course, how long our meetings are, the duration of our meetings, and then secondly, the most efficient or best use of the time that we have when we're meeting together as a governing body. So we have 4 proposals for the board to sort of mull over this evening, and we certainly aren't bound to any of these. It's to help us get the discussion going. The hope is that we can publicly discuss and then maybe perhaps come up with a meeting model that will better meet our collective needs. So the first proposal, let me jump right in. The first is the proposal to return to the committee of 3 structure, which of course precedes my tenure here. Under this proposal, our meeting structure or frequency would not change, but would allow for a committee to be made up of a chairperson, if I'm understanding correctly, and 2 additional commissioners. Additional commissioners can attend and participate in discussion, but they wouldn't be voting within the committee to bring forward resolutions to our business meetings. And Kelly, am I understanding that correctly? Okay, just making sure. And of course, they would be voting on those resolutions at the monthly business meeting, just they wouldn't be the ones bringing it forward, bringing the resolution forward. And of course, under this proposal, we would still live stream the meetings via Facebook and YouTube. The second proposal is to actually restructure the committees of the whole, meaning that we would continue to meet as a whole group, but reducing our meetings to 3 weeks per month instead of the 4 weeks, and then reinstating the quarterly meeting structure for most of our committees. So governance, HR, CIGR, audit, they would revert back to a quarterly meeting structure. And then policy, ESA, and finance would meet on a monthly basis still. So as with the prior proposal, meetings would then continue to be streamed via Facebook and YouTube. And the next slide actually shows what this quarterly meeting schedule might look like. So if you take a look up there, you can see how the meetings might be mapped out for the year. And so that's, I think all of you have access to this PowerPoint as well on Board Docs. The third proposal is actually a hybrid proposal of the first and second proposals. So this would entail us meeting with the chairperson or the committee chairperson and 2 additional commissioners, meeting 3 times per month, and then 4 meetings meeting quarterly, and then 3 committees meeting monthly, with non-committee members not being required to attend. Now, Kelly, I do have a question. On the other ones, are we requiring non-committee members to attend? Or is that something that's kind of a given for all of the proposals?
So the first proposal, which would have commissioners go back to the committee of 3, non-committee members would not be required to attend those ones. But of course, if it was the second proposal where it was just a reduction, where the committees would be meeting quarterly, persons would be required to attend, because it would still be the committees of the whole, but yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and so then the final proposal actually entails a restructure of our finance committee meetings, moving finance items from Tuesdays to our monthly business meeting on a Thursday night, with monthly finance reports not to exceed 30 minutes, and with the option of then adding longer finance items to the occasional special meetings agendas that we have. So finance would therefore meet on a bi-monthly basis as a committee of the whole on Tuesdays, but then have that monthly update at our business meeting. So just to summarize, what are our next steps? Well, I'm hoping that we can discuss these, some of these proposals, or just get some of your thoughts. And we're not looking to make a decision this evening, but we want to make a final decision by May 27th. And then hopefully we can implement the new proposal, whatever we choose to do as a board, by July 1st, 2021, which is the start of the fiscal year 21-22. So what I'm going to do is just look at my participant screen here. Do we have any? Well, I see some hands raised already. I see Commissioner Adams. Go ahead.
So for me, if we went to a 3-person committee structure again, there wouldn't be a need to be something in place that we got anything that the committee came up with in due time before the meeting, so that we can, because there's a trust factor. There's a trust factor, and we're not just going to be, you bring it to the committee of the whole, and then we make a vote on it. We're going to vet it and everything else. And so to keep us from having to waste or doing a lot of double time on stuff, there should definitely be something in the policy that any proposal, we get in plenty time to address it before we actually have a meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Next hand I see Commissioner LeBron.
Yeah, I was just, so I'm open to the discussions around the restructuring, and obviously I submitted the proposal for the finance restructuring because I do think that we can work around that piece, and that finance should be discussed anyway more really at the board business meeting, because that's what we're really there to do, is policy and finance first and foremost. But I just thought about this, like, if we go back to the committee structure, which is like 1 chair and 2 committee members, we were expected to serve across 3 committees. We're not reducing meetings really for ourselves. I just want to put that out there. Now we have the option of attending additional meetings, so we may reduce our meetings maybe by 1 or 2, but I don't know if it actually really reduces it if it's 3 serving on 3 different committees. I don't know if anybody's done the calculations on that.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Kalia, have we done any calculations on that, or I can't answer off the top of my head?
But I think really, go ahead, Commissioner Vice President Elliott.
I think what that does is allow people who may want to attend. No, not that. That's not my point. My point is that when you have only 3 people, excuse me, or maybe 4, as opposed to the 7, you don't have all of the discussion around it, which tends to lead to why we tend to have these long meetings. So when you're reducing the number of people who are serving on the committee, you're going to save time that way. So we may be attending, all these other meetings, but for that particular day or that meeting, you're not going to have everybody weighing in on the conversation. And not saying that that's not important, but what I am saying is that we're talking about reducing time, and that's a way in which we can reduce a significant amount of time, in my opinion.
Thank you.
And I to answer the question too, Commissioner Malloy, in addition to the time saved for the discussion, additionally, the hybrid version of the option also does reduce meetings to have people go. Ideally, if you go with the hybrid version, you get the best of both worlds, because you do reduce by having things go quarterly for all the other meetings, and then also having the committee of 3. The other point is the fact that right now, because it's it's committee of the whole, which is essentially a board meeting, administration and other staff resource these meetings in full, because of the fact that questions can come from all angles. If it's a committee of 3, a small committee, it would really only be the subject matter staff members who would be attending. So for example, a finance committee meeting of 3 would only really entail the CFO, the budget staff, and maybe the grant staff, depending on the topic agenda items. And then ESA would only have the academic staff. So we would also cut down on those kinds of things. Additionally, because we're not meeting as a whole, we wouldn't have to have the special meeting portion of the agenda where we have resolutions be considered in the night, in the meeting. We have other large board meeting agenda items that are added. So that's another time saver as well.
Thank you, Kalia. Thank you. I see more hands. Commissioner LeBron, go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to acknowledge Vice President Elliott. Like, I get what you're saying, because I remember the old structure, because that's where, when I first came in, that was the structure we had. But then going back to Commissioner Adams' point, is that there is a lack of trust. And so what used to happen before, when that trust was not really there, as new commissioners came on anyway, we would end up having the same repetitive conversation. So you had the conversation in the committee, and then that conversation extended over into the board business meeting, and then that extended those meetings, because I know for myself, I was not comfortable voting on certain things because it went through certain committees. So I get that we're trying to find a balance, but the reduction really is more for administration than for the board, because again, we'd all have to commit to 3 committees in order to have enough board members across all the different topics. But Kalia, I hear you on the hybrid, and I know for myself, I just want to put this out here. Whatever you all decide as a board for the rest of the committees, I still want to propose that finance is reduced to every other month for more in-depth conversations that are related to finance, but that the finance conversation is moved over end time to the board business meeting. Because I do think that regardless of the other topics, that is a way that could be managed that way.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Vice President Elliott, is that a new hand?
It is. I just wanted to say that I'm more in favor of the 3 member committee. And I was, in listening to Commissioner LeBron, I was somewhat taken aback, with regard to not having the finance committee meetings monthly, but you're saying that we'll have that discussion more in the business meeting. And is that what I'm hearing? Yeah, because I was thinking that, with the finance committee, that's crucial. I mean, that's one of the most crucial committees that we have. And so, and if there was an additional meeting that I would probably attend at this point, aside from if I'm not on that committee, that would be a committee that I'll be interested in attending. So I just wanted to say that my thought is to have the 3-member committee as opposed to having us meeting weekly with everybody attending.
Thank you, Vice President Elliott. Commissioner Powell?
Yeah, I would love for us to get to the place where we can be returned to 3-member committees. But what Commissioner Adams had to say, and Commissioner LeBron as well, really speaks to the fact that we're not ready for that. So for that reason, I'm more supporting or more leaning towards the second option, which is the full committees of the whole, but to reduce as many of those committees as possible to quarterly. And I'm wondering if there's a way that we can respond to the administrative resourcing issue along the way. I think it's wonderful that the superintendent attends every one of our committee meetings. And I don't know if it's because our format requires it of her now, but in the days when it was only 3-person committees, we never saw the superintendent. We never saw deputy superintendents. We only saw the members of the administration that were directly impacted by the agenda items. So I think it's terrific that there's more engagement in every piece of work that the board is doing, but I understand that that's exhausting for the administration, especially if they are with us. You know, they've been to work at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe earlier if you're Mike Schmidt, and you're still here at 11 o'clock at night because it's a board meeting night and you're expected to be back at central office at 7:30 the next morning. That is a huge burden for the administration. And I wonder if there is something that can be done to react to that so that the administration doesn't have to bear such a heavy burden for our inability to trust each other.
I certainly appreciate that. Thank you, Commissioner Powell. I see another hand, Commissioner LeBron.
Yeah, no, I actually want to agree with Commissioner Powell. I think even if we did the hybrid or we went with option 1, that even if at the hybrid model that we just identify, okay, we're going to be talking policy this month, governance next, and these are the staff members assigned to those topics so that it's not everybody. I would certainly support that. And I just wanted to clarify for Vice President Elliott, and then hopefully for the full board, if you have any questions on this, that the vision is that if finance is discussed in the board business meeting, regardless of which avenue and path you all decide on May 27th to take for the restructuring of these meetings, we will all be together at the board business meeting, and the administration and the superintendent. And then every other month we would meet as a committee, whether that is committee of the whole or 3 board members, but open to all the other board members to come in and ask questions to cover finance conversations more in depth. They would also be live streamed. And I think that's part of all of the proposals, that regardless of how we as a board land, we are still very transparent around these meetings and the topics that are being discussed by board members. Because in the past, our committee meetings weren't live streamed through Facebook or YouTube. And so that is something that I know for myself is very important that we still do. And I know you all feel that way because it made it onto this proposal and all 3 options are there. But I just wanted to clarify that, Commissioner Vice President Elliott, because you know, I absolutely know that finance is one of the most critical pieces, and you know how I am about it as well. And I still think that we can streamline the finance committee again to every other month, have more in-depth conversations about things that we may need to, and align it with like the reports that we have coming in and being presented. But there are months where we're just going over where we're at financially by the end of that month. And those things can be done through the board business meeting, and everyone will be there anyway. So it'll be a good opportunity for all of us to ask questions and just focus on that. And other topics could be added to the regular board business meeting as needed.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Malloy, I can't raise my hand because I'm a co-host.
Go ahead, President
Thank
White.
you very much. Yeah, I would agree with the comments made by Commissioner Powell and Commissioner LeBron, and I assume others probably find some agreement in a little bit of what they said. Option number 2 is, at this particular point, makes sense to me, plus additional tweaking as suggested by Commissioner LeBron of finance incorporating into full meetings. And then again, as it is clearly the superintendent's discretion, to the extent that our schedule is deemed to be, somewhat burdensome on them, it's obviously within their discretion to maybe limit or decide maybe she or her colleagues don't have to be at a particular meeting. I do look back like Commissioner Powell, and I reflect that it was very unusual to have superintendent attend any of the committee meetings. That's not to say that that was a good practice. I do like the fact that our superintendent finds these meetings so important that she takes the time to attend. But there may be a way in her own experience as a superintendent, present and past, where she thinks there's another way to handle that. But having said that, I do want, Leslie, I do want you to know, I think it shows the priority that you place in the conversations that the board has. So, but if there's any way you can lessen the burden on yourself and staff as we make changes, I personally would encourage you to do that. Thank you, Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you, President White. Oh, I see Commissioner Clark has his hand raised. Go ahead.
Yes, I just had a couple of observations. As a relatively new member, I think because I also agree with the hybrid model, but I think we really need to look at what brought us to this point where all of our committee meetings are committee meetings of the whole. Because if we don't address that, and I think Commissioner Adams is right on when he says it's a trust issue, we need to address what brought us to this point and how we're going to change. We need to look at what we're doing now and how can we change so that the meetings are efficient meetings, because if we rehash every meeting in the board meeting, then we've accomplished nothing.
Commissioner Malloy?
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. President White, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Again, I apologize. I can't formally raise my hand. To Commissioner Clark's point, for folks who don't know, we have been meeting in retreat format over the last probably year and a half, not with the same person. We currently are using a gentleman by the name of Dr. Malik Muhammad, who is trying to help us figure out how do we increase the level of trust. The lack of trust is not unusual in situations such as this, but it's not tolerable. And he asked a question during our retreat, which is sort of a hypothetical. He said, well, what'll happen if you continue to accept it the way it is? And we would continue to have to meet in this perhaps less efficient format. Again, Commissioner Clark asked, well, how did this happen? And as Commissioner Adams has answered, it's happened because we don't trust each other. But I want the community to know that we are not accepting of the fact that we have to meet in this format because there's a lack of trust. We understand that it's our responsibility as public officials to deal with that underlying issue so that we can meet in a way that is efficient and effective and best serves the citizens as community and not serves our own personal hangups. So we are working on that. And as James Cleveland used to say, please be patient with us. God is not through with us yet. Thank you, Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you for pointing that out, President White. Thank you. So I guess just to summarize, well, I just wanted to give my own personal take on it. I am really amenable to perhaps the second proposal along with what Commissioner LeBron has proposed for finance. So if we could merge those two, that's kind of what my thinking is at the moment. But is there any other discussion on this or any other questions? We good? All right, I did want to ask perhaps our parliamentarian, like what steps we would need to take to make this a reality. If we were to make changes, do we need to change our bylaws?
Yeah, this really all does stem from the bylaws. the law itself, on the open meetings law, simply states that you have to allow people to come and watch when deliberations are occurring or board business occurring. It doesn't provide any guidelines really around speakers, but your bylaws are very explicit to that, which is why you currently in the committee of the whole structure have to go into a special board meeting, which I think also adds some additional time to these meetings. I think it would be best to change the bylaws to allow for a committee structure that does not have to open in a full special board meeting. Right now what you get with a full special board meeting is speakers really on any topic. You could limit those to either speakers specifically as to the committee topics, or no speakers at all, and reserve those for the board business meeting only. Those would be options you would have. And to not allow other agenda items on in a general specialized agenda. And should the administration be in a position where they desperately need to get something done before before the next board business meeting, they could ask for a special meeting as was done in the past, and just get people together. Or then you call a special meeting at the beginning of the committee, but not have it a freestanding item. I think from my observations over the years, that is what's adding time to the current committee structure. I mean, we often get 40 minutes in and we're still not to the committees yet. So that could be a way. And that could all just be built into the bylaws. That's really at the discretion. It's kind of a combination of a governance and policy, amending the bylaws is amending a policy. That's a policy committee meeting. But it also happens to do really the subject matter is yours. Conveniently, I'm the liaison to both of those committees. So I could kind of be the bridge between you and really offer up some suggestions. But what we need to get is a sense from the will of really, almost a straw poll as to what we would present as far as that, and offer something up for a vote. And I think we would probably fast track that and not necessarily wait. Commissioner Powell, you're being chair of policy. I'd have to ask for your thoughts on that, but we could almost, push that out of order a little bit and move it to the next policy committee should meet somewhere around the beginning of June. We could put it there and run it through like that. Would be my thought if we want to get this thing done before the end of the school year, that is still feasible. But that's probably the best way to do it. Take a sense from the group here, take a cut at something, put it in front of everybody, and then potentially get it in queue to get a vote. That's just my thoughts on it.
June 1st, that's the governance and policy meeting. So could be an agenda on perhaps either, whatever. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Carling. Commissioner Powell, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I like that suggestion a lot. The first thing is to actually craft language and get it in front of folk. And we don't need to use the first, second, and third readings. We can waive that because those are designed to get input primarily from the public. And since the bylaws govern us and us alone, we can probably agree to waive the policy adoption requirements once we're all comfortable with the language that's proposed.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Thank you, Commissioner Powell. So our next steps on this would be then to get the language of this, or do we need to conduct more of a straw poll?
Well, I have to be guided by what we think the majority wants. I just casually listening to everybody. I'm hearing keep the committees, but go more with the option 2 model for the moment, but then try and lean them down, which would be where I would try and take out the special meeting agenda and speakers on any topic. So maybe if you can get a sense from the group as to whether or not people want to allow speakers at all, or if we want to limit them to only those committee items, which either is fine, or just continue to let people speak about whatever they want. And then we'll just work on modifying kind of a new bullet point in the bylaws for committee meetings only. And then, just whatever it is people want, we'll try and capture as best we can the language change.
All right, would anyone like to speak on that and voice their preference? Not seeing any hands. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Powell.
Sorry, just to kick things off. I'm all in favor of getting public input, but I think just so that we can get more work done, I'd like to confine public input to our business meetings, to public hearings that are specifically designed for that purpose, and community forums that, again, are designed specifically to reach out to the public.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. I'm in agreement with that, actually. Is there anyone else who'd like to voice a preference? Speakers, regarding speakers, etc. I'm not seeing anybody. Okay, I'll just go around and ask. Commissioner Clark, do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, I also agree that it's important to have the public comment on issues. I would tweak it a little, though, and I would say that if we're having an audit meeting or a finance committee meeting and the public wanted to speak specifically to that issue, that we should allow it.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. Vice President Elliott, do you have a preference for speakers, etc.?
Yeah, I think it should be, well, it depends if we're going to do, if we're doing the three commissioner committees, then it should be apropos to the committee is my thought, particularly since there's only going to be, three, maybe, some of the other commissioners are going to be invited. And I think that it should be a time limit, maybe 30 minutes or something to that effect, 15 minutes, something. I'm not sure what the time limit should be on speakers, but if we're doing an ESA meeting, then that may not be the place to discuss anything that may be related to, let's say community intergovernmental relations, for example. So, and then it may, but yeah, it needs to be more subject focused if we're going to have speakers there, and it needs to be limited because these are work sessions. So that's my thought.
Thank you for those thoughts, Vice President. I'm just going to kind of go around here. Commissioner Adams?
So the fact that I think you said that we would be live streaming these things, that is a big plus to the community right there. Just being able to live, they never had that option. I've been to a lot of them committee meetings and they wouldn't even give us, a copy of the resolution or anything. We got no copies of nothing when I was sitting up in there. It was really, so I would go with no speakers. They could listen and watch and be prepared to go to the main meeting, the cow meeting, the meeting of the whole, and bring it on. But we're defeating our own purpose if we just start having the speakers there. We really are. And I'm one who supports community voice more than anybody. That's my life. That's who I am. But no, I don't support that in those committee meetings. Not in the three-person committee meeting. We're going to be live streaming, and they could just watch and be prepared to get on the speakers list at the committee of the whole. That's what I got for you.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Commissioner LeBron, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, Commissioner Adams, I appreciate you. I just want to always uplift that. But I just want to say I actually do agree that we should, if we're going to go back to committees, that there are no speakers in committees, but in that same notion that there's no administration, resolutions, and business trying to be done at a committee meeting. And when we went to this structure initially, the goal was not to have these special meetings. It's just that the way that the language is, we technically, Carl said a meeting is a meeting. If it's more than 4 people and we're public, that's just what it is. So we had the opportunity to conduct business. But in that same regard, though, I would just say that if it's just going to be a committee focus, then it's only a committee focus. And yes, that we have other avenues to provide input. And that may mean that we have to look at hot topics and potentially have public hearings and add additional public hearings as hot topics come up. But I also just want to stress that that would also mean that administration, in my opinion, should not bring forth resolutions that we're voting or discussing beyond the board business meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. See, I'm probably missing someone.
Van.
Okay, President White.
Yeah, I just got to make sure I understand where we're going. I didn't think, in listening to sort of the end and the comments of board members, I thought we weren't dumping the committee process. We weren't reinstating the 3-person committee process, that we were going to go with this sort of a hybrid, but reduce the time of the meetings. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I heard a lot of people say, well, yeah, we don't need speakers in the 3-person committee process. I just want a point of clarification. Was that the consensus of the prior conversation? I thought the consensus was keep the committee of the whole the way it is now, try to figure out the trust issues, and then maybe eventually get back to 3-person committees. But I hear people, when they're talking about speakers, they're talking about we're going back to 3-person committees. And I didn't think we were doing that just yet.
Thank you for pointing that out. I was wondering the same thing, President White.
Yeah.
We need to have clarification.
Yeah. So if what I heard was correct, which is we're going to stick with what we're doing until we figure out the other issues through Dr. Malik Muhammad and so forth, I would support the continued opportunity for people to speak, because remember now, we went to this format of committees on the whole, COW, because we wanted to make sure everybody was hearing what everybody was hearing at the same time. And if that's where the decisions are being made, because if this is really working efficiently, we shouldn't be repeating the conversations. So we'll have these committees of the whole, maybe reduced, more efficient. These topics will come up. We're deliberating on them because all of us are there. The question should be asked, why wouldn't the community be heard at that point in time as well? Because when it comes out of committee and is referred to the full board, the cake has been baked, supposedly. We wouldn't be repeating the conversation at the full committee. So if you're asking people to wait until the full committee or the full board meeting, that's not going to be much of a legitimate opportunity for input, because we would have pretty much deliberated over the issue at the COW. So you wouldn't want to have a process that says, we're going to deliberate fully, make a referral, maybe a positive referral on a piece of a resolution. Then, 2 or 3 weeks later, it goes before the full board. And if we're really being efficient, we wouldn't repeat that whole conversation again. And then the person speaks and it's really too late. Or if it's not too late and the citizen has something significant to say, then we got to rehash the whole conversation again. That wouldn't be efficient. So.
Thank you, President White. Commissioner Powell?
A question to clarification on what President White just said. Van, if we limited the conversation to specifically to the agenda, would you be more comfortable with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So if it's a subject on ESA, person wants, I'm sorry, Commissioner Malloy, is it okay for me to respond? Commissioner Malloy? Yeah, thank you. So if someone comes to a committee meeting and they're talking about a specific curriculum initiative or resolution that we're considering spending money on, and they want to speak to that, absolutely. But yeah, somebody couldn't just come in and speak to, whatever they, bus transportation issues at an ESA meeting, or the color of the football team's jersey at an ESA meeting. So yeah, it would have to be, in my opinion, yeah, it would have to be topically driven. That would only give you the opportunity to speak. You couldn't just come and just go off on the district or in support of something of the district.
Thank you, President White. I see Commissioner Adams.
Oh, so I just need to say that when we start talking about efficiency, we need to be honest here. We've been the most repeating group of people that I've ever heard talking. We go over the same stuff over and over and over, 1,743 times. So we have to be honest with that, and so that's just, I don't know. For me, that doesn't square it up. That's
Thank you. Did I interrupt him? Are you all okay? Commissioner LeBron.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that my comments were also, and we have said 3 because that was what Commissioner Adams had. I came after him, but what Steve actually said, our legal counsel, was that we can amend the bylaws so that we don't have speakers at committees, whether we're committee of the whole or we're not. We can actually amend the bylaws. And President White was just mentioning that, yeah, we should keep the comments limited to the topic, but I would like to do that then through the bylaws as well. So I would support that if it's done through the bylaws, because right now it's open for people from the community to come and talk about all kinds of topics, and they do, that are not related to what we're discussing that night. And that also, in my opinion, creates some confusion when they're coming to have conversations about topics we're not even covering that night. And then, I have heard people give feedback like, oh, you didn't even discuss this part of, what my concern was, that it was like, it wasn't on the agenda to have the discussion that night. And we can't just stay away, steer from the agenda because we were brought, And then I just have to add, like, the conversation about deliberations, happening decisions, I would question, this whole entire process anyway, because I do think there are lots of decisions that are made, sometimes by board members having private conversations and counting votes. So, like, let's be honest about that too. Sometimes these conversations don't happen the way that they should happen, both transparently and organically and in a public forum, and they're happening behind the scenes. So I just want to share all that. But again, I just would support that the changes are made through amendments to the bylaws, that if we have speakers, that they're then related to the topics that are being covered or the committees that are being covered that day.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Are there any other final comments on this before we move on?
Commissioner Malloy, let me just add, I agree with what Commissioner LeBron just said in terms of an amendment being made to specifically say that these are the areas that could be covered, because I think that makes it neat and clean. But I also wanted to remark that, by way of example, the conversation that we had about the OPEB today, that was good government. Commissioner Malloy Commissioner Powell has been speaking to people about it, speaking to the superintendent, speaking to board colleagues, but that no decision was made, as obviously people could see tonight. She had extensive conversation, but still it had to be put off because people needed more time to deliberate. And we had an extensive conversation in open air in the public. So I think people should understand that, government isn't just what you see on TV. People understand that there are conversations that have to take place offline, but then you come before the full public, you have those conversations. And if you can't reach a decision, you put it off again, which is what we've done here. So I think today is a good example of how it's a hybrid. You talk to your colleagues because that's what you're paid and that's what you're sworn an oath to do, to work with people online and offline. You come back on, you have some more conversation. I think this was our early discussions. I think we're a good example of that.
Thank you, President White. So just to quickly summarize maybe next steps, I'm wondering if acting council perhaps drafts something for us so that we can look through it. And I don't know how soon that you could potentially have that for us. Steve?
Well, we were talking about bringing it to the next policy committee meeting, which would be, I think you said June 1st, which is very doable. It might be helpful if just to get a sense right now, no commitment to a few. I mean, obviously the policy has to be voted upon officially, and if it's a modification of the bylaws, it's going to need to be by 5. But Kelly, you raised your hand. Is it something I should consider before I keep going?
Yes, I only
Okay.
had one small point, which is the reason why we put it for the May 27th consideration is because of the schedule of and the school calendar. I do have a little bit of concern. Whatever decision is made, we'll need to make sure that we ratify it in the calendar. And I know that we are under a time push. So I do have a question for Superintendent Myers-Small or anyone from the administration regarding what's our deadline for making sure we have those dates in to make sure those are printed or available for parents and families who are looking for dates.
Yeah, good call, Kalia. Thank you. Superintendent Myers-Small, did you want to comment on that?
I'm actually going to ask Medisol if she could come on because it would be through communications you're saying as far as publishing the calendar?
Yes, and making that available. I don't know when we have to have that by.
Okay. I don't know. Medisol, are you there? There she is.
Good evening, commissioners. Thank you, Superintendent Myers-Small. I will have to get with my team. We are now getting the quotes for next year's calendar. And so I can give you a better sense of a date, Kalia, but not right now.
Okay. Well, I mean, I could turn this thing around, in a couple of days. It's not a matter of the product, and we could, consider it even further out of order at whatever. If that's what drives the decision, I'm certainly flexible for everybody. It would be helpful if I knew what I was drafting, not without committing to an endorsement that you're going to support a bylaw change. If we had a sense, maybe just some hands or a straw poll or something, are we going to go down to 3 or are we going to keep committee of the whole? Like we can start process of elimination and try and get a sense of that.
Just to interrupt, sorry about that. I see that Commissioner Powell's hand is up, and just prior to doing what you're asking for, if I wanted to know if Commissioner Powell had something else to add.
Well, it was somewhat related to the calendar question, and I can close it, bring it back around to what Steve was talking about. We do have a policy subcommittee that meets every 2 weeks. That would be an opportunity for us to kind of look over that first draft that Steve might come up with. And I would just suggest the fewest possible changes is the best way to get to 5. That is to say, if there are 5 hands that say, yes, we need to stay committee of the whole, well, there we have it. If there are 5 hands that say speakers, but only on committee topics, that's the narrowest change that I can frame into words, and see if we get movement on that. And that will give Steve the guidance he needs.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. And also, whenever you meet for that planning meeting for policy, please invite me so we can work together.
Thank you.
Thanks. So, Steve, did you want to ask everyone, or should we just go around? And there were 2 items that we're looking for here.
I guess I would say there's maybe 3 because we need to know what people think, because you offered a couple of opportunities in the scheduling. I think particularly it was option 2, maybe, that talked about when they would get, or maybe it was option 3, whichever one, I'm sorry, that talked about when the committees would meet, whether, who gets quarterly, who gets, so, because that really does need to be put into the bylaws, because right now they list them all out as equal meetings. So my first round of questions for everybody is everybody comfortable? Let me just ask as an up and down. Do you want to stay as a committee of the whole? And if I can get hands or something, that would be okay. So I got 3, I got 4. I can't see Commissioner LeBron. I can't see President White.
I can't raise my hand, but
I just want to see, everybody else is just physically raising their hand, or you can.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Okay. Commissioner LeBron, that's an intentional no? Yep.
So I'm sorry, Sophia just had a little accident behind me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so give me one quick second, make sure she's okay.
Okay. Vice President Elliott, are you are a no on the sticking with the whole, you'd rather go to 3? Is that, am I reading that right? Okay. Yes. All right. Well, we have 5, even without Commissioner LeBron. So for the moment, we'll move in that direction. Commissioner LeBron, the question was going down to 3 or staying with the whole committee, and we have 5 for so far that say stay with the whole. I was curious where you were on that.
Honestly, I think I could go either way.
All right.
As long as like there's some clear like boundaries and directions for either side. I think for me, my focus is obviously the finance piece, doing that hybrid portion for finance. So we can also get a vote on a straw poll on that, because I know that Commissioner Powell listed a few different things, but I don't know if I heard her mention that.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I'm trying my best to keep, but I'll add that in with the next question or the next one. So allowing speakers, and I will put the caveat, but limiting them just to the committee agenda items, or no speakers at all. So let me start with who wants to allow speakers, but on a limited basis. If I could see, I see Commissioner Powell, Commissioner Clark, President White, Commissioner Malloy, Commissioner LeBron. All right, so 2 no's from Commissioner Adams and Vice President Elliott, but we have 5 on that point. Okay, that is helpful. And then if we go to a modified structure, Kelly, could you put up what we had just for a minute, and then I'll have to come back to the screen to see everybody. Okay. So this proposal 2 would be, no, 2 is great. That's what I was looking for, just that modified. Because if we're going to go to committees of the whole, we really need to think about, in order to make any progress, we need to do something like this, I think. So, all right, let me get back to the main screen so I can see people. My question is this: do people want to go with option 2, but also a little twist on it in that finance only meets every other month and then reports out to the main board the alternating months? Is that good? I see Commissioner Malloy, Commissioner Clark, Commissioner LeBron. All right, President White. Commissioner Powell, how do you feel about that suggestion?
If the CFO is okay with us with that, I mean, my concern is being able to see the reports before we talk about them, and so long as there's a mechanism for asking our questions before we're asked to approve the report, I'm okay with this.
All right.
Steve, I just want to clarify, you would all be asking questions at the board business meeting, and you would get the packet with the resolutions and all that beforehand, the way that we do now for the board business meeting. So I just want to be clear that moving finance every other month to the board business meeting does not eliminate the entire opportunity. It just focuses the conversation at the board business meeting before we actually were to vote on it. So it just happened right then and there, every other month.
Okay. All right. So here's what I think I see from the straw poll. We're going to go with committees of the whole, but on the modified schedule, that's option 2, including finance going once every other month. We're going to limit speakers to just committee agenda items. I'll amend the bylaws to reflect that. We're not going to have an opening in a special meeting format first. And we will always have it, for now, everything's live streamed because we're still in that format. But even when we return to in-person meetings, if we live stream the general business meeting, people want to live stream the committee meetings. I think I've captured the, which we had started to do, and then COVID shut us down. But I remember we did have a plan to start televising even the committee meetings when they were in the old structure. So, okay, I think I have it. I will work on some language, and to Commissioner Powell's suggestion, I will try and we'll have it ready for the next time we meet in the subcommittee. And then we'll figure out timing based on the calendar needs. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Carling. All right, so just moving on to our next agenda item, I just wanted to ask, perhaps Kalia can help here. Our next item is about our board polling tool. And there's a whole presentation that I could go through, but with respect to time, is this something that we absolutely need to discuss this evening, or is this something that we can do by having people look over the poll results and then maybe proposing some changes to maybe the questions that we're asking one another? I could go through each one with you and talk about it, but I'm wondering, just we have a full policy meeting ahead of us as well. Would anyone be opposed if we do it that way? Anyone?
Absolutely not. No objection.
Speaking of meeting lengths and times, right? And being more
Yes,
efficient. Yeah, because this will take at least another 30 minutes probably to talk about and discuss. So I would encourage everyone to look on board docs at the presentation just to see the results of the polling that we've been conducting since last November, and just look carefully through that and look at some of the questions. It's really clearly laid out in the presentation. And so if you could maybe perhaps email me or Kalia, just get back to us about maybe proposed changes to our poll. And I think that we just have different polling tools that we can use, and just, we have to think about what are we trying to get at by asking these questions. And if you think that there are questions that should replace the ones that we have on our current tool, please let me know, and we will circle back up on this later, because I don't think that there's not a pressing need right now to continue this conversation. Is anyone opposed to that? Are we good?
Commissioner Malloy, I just want to make sure that when I was chairing the meetings that I got all 10s. That's what I want to look for in the presentation. That's all I'm looking for.
Vice President. All right, so I guess we will not table that.
I'm serious about that, Commissioner Malloy. She wasn't joking.
I guess moving on, so we'll discuss this very soon. I think that our next, I'm sorry, let's see, gotta get to my next item here. That's gonna take about, this just saved us about 30 minutes of time, so that's wonderful. All right, so just the next items are the final items, I would say, were just quick updates. So I wanted to give you the first update is just regarding the board monitor recommendation for the creation of comprehensive diversity, anti-bias, and anti-racism training as part of the onboarding of our new board members and current board members. So we're researching and compiling information from various programs, and we're hoping to have a more comprehensive list of vetted programs by our next governance meeting. So I will make sure to disseminate these a week or so prior to our next governance meeting so that we can discuss as a committee and then hopefully finalize or make a selection as a group by July so that we can prepare to add this to our board training and our professional development. So just a quick update on that, and I will be getting back to you very shortly on that item. Finally, our next item relates to board retreats. And just as President White reported earlier in the evening, we've just completed our second board retreat with Dr. Malik Mohammed, and we're in the process of scheduling a third retreat with him, which will most likely take place in June, just as we continue to work on our board interpersonal relations and trust issues. So we're going to continue to work on making progress in this area using restorative principles, and we will have, of course, more information to update you on shortly. All right, our final agenda item is just an update on upcoming bylaws. and changes regarding a potential return to in-person meetings, as well as the roles and responsibilities of our board officers. So here to kind of take over at this point is Acting General Counsel Steve Carling. If you could just report on this for us, please, Steve. Thank you.
Sure. Just a couple of updates from last time everybody spoke. There was a general consensus about some desire to return to in-person. We brought that back and kind of discussed it with some of the staff that are in charge of safety, and they were able to provide me with a lot of guidance, and I've verified this coming out of the governor's office. Really, the guidance is that while they're encouraging schools to reopen for in-person learning, they are very strongly encouraging adults to hold meetings remotely to the extent that it doesn't interfere in the business, and to the extent that the technology is available. The guidance further states that if the staff or the board have to meet in person, they have to maintain 6 feet distance and wear masks at all times. That is not relaxed at this point. And to the extent that there is some allowance for people who are vaccinated, when everyone's vaccinated, be in the same space, their masks off, we would have to know that everybody in the room is. Currently, I can tell you that outside, the board is certainly not alone in meeting remotely. The staff pointed out to me that almost all school-based staff meetings are occurring via Zoom. Central office meetings are occurring via Zoom. And so that's consistent with the regulations that we're getting. And that we do, in fact, the district's technology is very strong in allowing, the full public access and opportunities to speak. So given that if the board did, even if just the board came back and sat in one room and that was televised out, we would have to allow people the opportunity to come in. And in which case, we would have some issues of safety and security potentially, but more importantly, the board members would all have to be masked while speaking. And I'm not sure the practical, I don't know how well that's going to be understood, but those are just some updates from digging much deeper into the guidance. And it comes right out of the governor's office, as well as the CDC. There's a mix of interesting articles, and they're all relatively recent. I'm happy to share what it was we have, but I just wanted to give you all an update on that. The governor's order is continued through our next board meeting through May 27th. So we have a little bit of time to keep walking with this, but I think that it certainly bears consideration as the new guidance, if it makes sense to go back until such time as the district is compelled to go back. At this point, it's allowable to continue in the current method.
Thank you, Mr. Carling. And then just regarding the other agenda item, just the.
So Cynthia's hand is up. Is that on this topic, Cynthia? Oh, it just went down.
Vice President Elliott, I'm sorry, did you?
No, I just didn't want to, it may be the next agenda item with regard to the role of the Vice President. Was that not on the agenda?
That's what it was regarding. I wasn't sure though. Steve was going to provide us more information on that.
Okay, so is that where we are now? We're waiting for Steve to provide more information?
If he's able to. I don't know anything about this.
Oh, so it's not, I thought it was going to be on the agenda. I thought I saw it on the agenda.
Yeah, I just need more clarification. Steve, were you going to be presenting on that?
I certainly can. Yep. So the currently in the bylaws, the role of vice president is limited to filling in when the president isn't available, but it's rather general. Under the in the education law, the duties and responsibilities of a president are more clearly defined and required, in fact, that you have to have a president. You do not have to have a president under education law, but the district has chosen to have one. From her years of experience in the vice president's chair, Vice President Elliott has shared that she believes there's more that can be done by the vice president. And so she and I had a conversation about this, and some thoughts that kind of occurred to me. And I really am just throwing these out for discussion points. No endorsement or direction. But if you were to try and expand upon it, you might want to specifically allow the vice president to have signing authority in the situation where the president isn't available, or to allow some perhaps board staff oversight, or those could be areas where you could kind of build upon what's there right now. Certainly it's clear that if the president is available for meetings, the vice president steps in and becomes the chair. But those would be the areas where you could kind of expand on it if that's what you want to explore as a group. But again, it's consensus and 5 votes because it's a bylaw amendment.
I'm thinking also, Steve, that the vice president could also share in some of the supervisory responsibilities of the board staff. We've got the audit, we've got the regular board staff. We have, and we've outsourced the claims department. But I'm thinking that it just seems to me that it may be a lot for one person to assume. I think that I'm not sure if we have really provided the kind of oversight to even our board staff, because it is I think it's a lot. I think we can look at how we can even structure the staff differently, the reporting differently. I just so that the president's role is not burdened, and so that it's more than just the president who has this responsibility. And I think that there probably needs to be 2 people just to be able to reflect, have some conversations. Both the president and the vice president are in the board officers meeting. I just think that the role of the president in other areas where the president is involved, that the vice president role can assume some of those responsibilities. Now, having said all that, I have not worked all of that out, but it just seems to me that we need to have, I think, some checks and balances, meaning that, having an additional person in terms of oversight of the board staff and signature authority. And, I'm really just open to have, and maybe we can't do it tonight, but to just have some conversation about what other role should that, should the position be responsible for. It would seem to me that the position of vice president can be used much more involved in some of the day-to-day operations of the board. So I'm not all sure what that looks like, because I'm not talking about specifically for me, I'm talking about the position. And so I'll leave that at this for right here for the time being, and maybe have some discussion in the future.
Thank you, Vice President Elliott. Thank you for bringing that up. All right, so I guess we'll revisit that at some point once we have more information. So I guess that concludes our discussion items for governance this evening. So just want to say thank you to everyone. Our next governance meeting is going to be June 1st. And so now I pass the gavel. Well, do I pass it back to President White or right over to Commissioner Powell for policy?
Van, we don't hear you. You're muted.
Thanks, Commissioner Powell. Whatever works for the body works best for me. I do want to say, though, that Commissioner Malloy, thank you for soldiering through your committee meeting. I know you weren't feeling well, and we appreciate the time that you took to get us through that important agenda. So having said that, obviously, Commissioner Powell, the gavel is yours. I would ask that you appreciate the fact that you are now a victim of a behind our time. It's now 8:22, We were supposed to be done with your agenda, I think by 8, I think is what the agenda says, but I know you'll do your best to get us through. Thank you. The gavel is yours.
Okay, thanks. Well, the best way I know to keep us on track is to turn things over to Rahima, who, she takes very careful notes and keeps us on track during the subcommittee. So Rahima, do you want to start us off with the first agenda item? I got to pull it up on board docs just to.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. So our first agenda item is just a quick update on the policy the policy manual update subcommittee. So that committee continues to meet bi-weekly, and we are currently reviewing the school's policies. And so we've kind of done a hybrid between part 1 and part 2, and all individuals have been in the midst of reviewing their policies and forwarding that out. So that committee continues and on schedule. So Steve, I think you're gonna talk about a couple of NYSBA updates.
NYSBA provided us a big packet of updates. Are you talking about the ones that you sent me to review for whether to make any changes to our existing policies?
So there are actual 2 packets I sent you. That first one, yes, from the workshop, and then there was a second for just the regular quarterly installment.
Right. Of there, I found 3 that are potential. I'm planning to meet with the executive cabinet about them on Tuesday, so I'll be ready to bring forward next month. A lot of it was really updating policies to include, to ensure that they're inclusive of remote learning. We were already ahead of the curve on that. There had been policy updates already. We had adopted formally some of the NYSBA policies on remote learning, including they were concerned about people's code of conducts being reflective of the ability to discipline for students acting up online, but we do have that covered in a couple of different places. So a lot of it is not necessary at this point. I certainly don't think it's urgent. There are a couple areas where we could finesse what we have, and maybe we'll take it either at a turn or just wait till it comes in turn because it's not critical. But I'm going to ask the administration for their thoughts on the 3 primary areas that I found, and we'll get back to it on June 1.
Sounds good.
Rahima, tell us where we're at with all the special ed committee special ed policies.
So yes, I was just speaking about the policy update process. We have reviewed in the initial committee and through cabinet all of the special ed policies. The CPAC group did submit some recommendations and questions related to part 3, which was forwarded to special education department for some feedback and written feedback. And so we're in communication with them to provide that. And then we will invite representative from that group to the policy committee meeting to discuss. And then as I updated already, all of the school part policies continue and currently on track.
So special ed packet 1 and 2 have been through cabinet and no need to revisit in subcommittee. Are all of those policies available on board docs? And they've all been provided by email or by board docs to the members of this committee. So my fondest hope. Yes, please.
I'm sorry to interject for a moment. Yes, all of what you've said is accurate. We will be having a presentation shortly to address all of those policies which are posted on board docs and have also been shared with all of the commissioners. Prior to my doing that, Steve is going to quickly review the drug-free policy.
Okay, good. I took things out of order. Okay, in that case, I'll turn it over to you to keep us on track.
Steve, that would be you for the drug-free policy.
I'm really talking far more than I like during this particular evening, but let me take us quickly through. We already talked about the fact that there's been a modification to the labor law to prohibit us from considering the legal use of cannabis or any cannabis derivatives outside of work. So I built that into the policy down here. We will take it out of our panel for testing, except to the extent that it's required under a federal law because the federal government still classifies this as an illegal substance. So consistent with Commissioner Clark's requests and a few other nods at the time, we specifically listed those positions that would not be exempted from a marijuana test, either pre-employment or during employment, and they are these. They are, for the moment it says including but not limited to, but these are the only ones at this moment. We just wanted to leave a little flexibility in case a new class came up that we don't have at the moment, and before it catches up with us amending policy. But this is how it reads. So we've tried to capture both areas of concerns. We've restricted it out of the pre-employment for everybody else, so we don't even see it. There's no temptation, and for everybody going forward, anybody else, it would be just this group of people. So anybody who's coming on board would know that this is something they're going to be tested for if they're applying for one of these specifically enumerated titles. I hope that, again, it only applies to pre-employment drug testing. Any employee suspected of being under the influence of any drug, including marijuana, while at work, we can still subject to drug testing. And if we find it, we can discipline for it, the same as if it was alcohol, which is also a legal substance, but not allowable at work. So that's where we are. Try to make it as easy as possible. So any questions, let me know.
Okay, so bringing this back with these changes was essentially a speed bump in the process of getting this one through. So what I'd like to do is call for a vote to have it released from policy committee. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? I see Commissioner Malloy has come back on the screen. Are you seconding it?
Second.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is Ricardo? Ricardo's an aye, if I can read. And I think that's unanimous, right, Rahima?
Yes, I've recorded that.
Okay. All right. That takes care of that. We will be, will this be the first one that gets the first, second, and third reading at the board level? Will that policy have passed by then?
It'll be close.
All right. I'll turn the floor back over to Steve if you're ready to present those special ed packets.
That's not me. That's Rahima.
Oh,
that will actually be myself with the support of Special Education Counsel Yolanda Osama-Wade and Jean McNamara, who is the Compliance Director for Special Education. So I will start the presentation. Just share my screen here. Okay, so just to kind of start and remind people where we are in this process. So this was a graphic that I shared when we originally discussed the policy manual review process. So we have successfully gone through subcommittee, district administration, and community input, as well as the second review by subcommittee for special education policies included in part 1 and part 2. We also take it back to the policy cal, and now we are we're here now, and then we'll be discussing moving it out of policy and to the full board. So some of the individuals who have contributed to the process of reviewing these policies would be Commissioner Powell as the policy chairperson. Other commissioners have joined in the meeting. Superintendent Dr. Myers-Smalls has joined us occasionally. Executive Cabinet had the opportunity to review all policies. General Counsel participates in our subcommittee meetings. Chief Counsel for Special Education reviewed all of the policies to ensure compliance with any updated federal, state, and education law mandates. Again, she did that in collaboration with Mr. McNamara, the Special Education Compliance Director. CPAC was given the opportunity to weigh in on all policies and provide recommendations and updates, as well as attend the meetings. And then I also attend all policy subcommittee meetings. So the process has been, just to reiterate, that the first level of review occurred at the Special Education Department, led by Mr. McNamara and Ms. Osama-Wade. Those recommendations were then forwarded to the entire policy subcommittee for review in advance of our meetings. And then Mr. McNamara joined all policy subcommittee meetings to walk us through each and every one of those policies individually with all changes, and was kind enough to oblige us and answer all of the questions that we had related to those changes. After that process was completed, it was sent out to both CPAC and executive cabinet, providing 30-day review window for each section of those policies. After they review, those policies are returned to the subcommittee. And so we would then continue in that review process. Subcommittee discussed any recommendations that were provided by CPAC and cabinet. And we also, Mr. McNamara and Ms. Osama Wade provided written feedback to questions presented by CPAC. In relation to the special education policies that we've been reviewing, they were all adopted in February 2012. And since that time, no further updates and changes have been made. And so it was quite a lift for Mrs. Wade and Mr. McNamara to go ahead and bring those into alignment. So I really want to take the opportunity to thank them for all of their hard work and effort where that was applied. Policies were updated to use plain language as appropriate, understanding that some portions were lifted directly from regulations, and so we made minimal changes there. I'm going to turn it over now to Jeannie and Yolanda to go through just some of the significant changes to those policies. Again, commissioners, you were provided the policies about a week or two ago just to have review time. And I'm going to note that our original plan included the review of policy 4205 and 4206, but once we were in committee, it was realized that both of those policies apply outside of special education into the general education population, and because they're special education services. And so those were returned to the schools section and will be reviewed later, just so you're hearing why there's a jump in numbers. So Jeannie and Yolanda, if you'd like to go ahead.
Well, thank you everybody for having us tonight. We will be brief. We'll go through just really the major changes to each of the policies, and Yolanda and I will just switch off back and forth. The first policy that we're looking at is 4200 Special Education District Plan. The main part of this that was changed, they were again minimal changes specifically to meeting the state's guidelines. We were removing some wording regarding the space plan for the district being developed by BOCES, and that is no longer a requirement based, it's not developed by BOCES, it's the districts. And then the changes to this piece were very minimal. Again, putting in here that we were going to not only develop a plan, but implement it and monitor the plan. And I believe this plan was submitted to the board at a previous meeting, and it was approved and adopted. For the next one.
Yolanda, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to echo Jean's sentiments in thanking everyone for having us here. It's certainly an honor and a pleasure to serve. For policy 4201, this one involves parent participation, and it's really all about the aspects of informed consent under the IDEA. And what we found in this policy was that there were several areas where the policy really needed to specify when consent needed to be in writing, which is pretty much all the time. So we modified various portions of that policy to reflect that the informed consent must be informed written consent. We also, since COVID, there's been a development and there was a change in the regulation to allow for parents to provide consent electronically. And so we updated the policy to reflect that portion of the regulation that changed. And so that was aligned. That's pretty much it. The rest was formatting in 4201.
Okay. 4202 really references, it just talks about what a student definition, what a student with a disability means, some reporting requirements, and information on the least restrictive environment. The changes were duplicate statements regarding, again, the space plan. And you're going to see that in a couple of the policies where we removed the duplication because we actually have a policy that deals with the space plan. So we removed the duplication for that plan, which is covered. And I don't have the policy number, but we'll see it as it comes up. And that's all that the changes were for 4202.
So in 4203, this is the policy that requires the board to authorize and direct the superintendent of schools to establish and maintain administrative practices and procedures consistent with state policies for things like child fine, CSE and CPSC convocations, FAPE, data, and data maintenance and privacy. And in this policy, all we did was change some formatting, and we also removed references to the ed law from the main body that were sandwiched in various places and placed them in the reference section for reader friendliness. That was that for 4203.
Okay. 4204 is the policy for the allocation of space, where we made the other changes and removed it. The wording in here again removes the plan being designed by the BOCES, and that's what it used to be. So now it just states that the allocation of space is there for students with disability within a district for least restrictive, and that it should be that there should be stability and continuity for the programs within the district to meet their needs. That was the only change to that policy.
So in 4207, which is the policy concerning the board's duties to appoint the Committee on Special Education, and that policy outlines the membership panel that has to exist on a CSE team. And all we did was change the title. We had the title director for the Director of Special Education, where it stated that the Director of Special Education shall be responsible to the superintendent for establishing administrative practices and procedures for training all district personnel responsible for carrying out the provisions of Part 200. And so we changed that title to the Chief and/or Executive Director of Special Education, changing that from Director.
Okay. Policy 4208 is the appointment and the training in the Committee on Special Education and Preschool Special Education. Basically, this kind of outlines the membership within the committees, and the change here was to clarify and update mandated committee members, specifically around the general education teacher being of the child, or a general education teacher that could be potential for a child that hasn't been classified yet attending the meeting. Also, the change was to remove the mandated parent member rep. We used to have a parent on every CSE meeting. That representative had been removed in the regulations, and it is there if a parent would like a parent rep. They just have to request that parent member to be there, and they have to give it to us 72 hours prior to the CSE. And that is all of the changes for that policy.
And so in policy 4209, which covers the development and provisions of students' IEPs, in that one, we noticed, and we found, also checking against the regulation, but it's certainly glaring to us that there was an omission of behavioral data that didn't exist in the policy and that really should be part and parcel of evaluative components when students are being evaluated for their IEP services, especially where behavior is an issue, of course. So we inserted the word behavioral wherever appropriate, as well as changing we just qualified the least restrictive environment to explain and make it a little bit more reader and user friendly, to explain that that means that we try to educate students with disabilities with their general education peers wherever appropriate. And then we also changed some formatting.
Okay, 4210 is the implementation of the individualized education programs. The only change here was specific to adding a regulatory requirement, the language that we need signed parental consent to initiate special education services. So after the committee decides that a child should receive services, we cannot begin to implement those services until a parent gives us signed consent to do so. And that was missing in this one. That was the only change to this policy, I believe. Let me just see, signed consent, correct, yes.
Okay, so in 4211, we have that we only changed some formatting, but in going back over it, Rahima, if you might want to just change this presentation. I did notice that we also included or qualified the definition of the least restrictive environment parenthetically to provide for parents' choice or parent election in accordance with our managed choice policy number 5130. That is because the least restrictive environment definition includes the requirement that the site for the child's education be as close as possible to the student's home. However, parents, as we know, may elect other locations or other sites for their children's schooling, and that may not necessarily be the site that's closest to the student's home. So we just wanted to make sure that we parenthetically qualified that. And other than that, we did some formatting changes.
Okay, 4212 is grouping students with disabilities by similarity of needs. The only changes we really made were a little bit more than formatting. There should have been areas considered for academic achievement, functional performance, social development was moved. It was grouped with the academic line, but it is a separate grouping. So it should say academic, social development, physical development, and management needs. And that was the only change to this one.
And then the last one in part 2 here is the ESY services, which is policy 4213, and we updated that to align with current regulation. So we checked current regulation. We made sure that the profile of students, because the regulation does provide for particular profiles for students with disabilities that must be considered for ESY services. So we updated, we made sure that all of those areas were included in the policy. And we also added the requirement per regulation that the committee include in its recommendation a statement of the reasons for why an ESY recommendation as part of the IEP was being recommended. And then we did some formatting changes there too.
Okay, in 4214, which really discusses declassification of students with disabilities and then graduating and aging out, the declassification information was not changed. The language changed under graduating and aging out students, specifically because of the type of diplomas. When the policy was written, there's no longer an IEP diploma. So we had to remove that and had to have it reflective of the diplomas required by the state, as well as, let me see, the requirement that states a student with a disability can remain in school until the end of the school year in which that student turns 21. And the other parts were formatting.
And then in policy 4215 on transition services, we made no changes. We found it to be appropriate.
That's everything.
That is all of them. That was pretty quick.
And brilliantly done. You can all see that if we were to actually show you track changes on all of those policies, we'd be here till midnight. What I'd like to do, having thanked our administrative support profoundly for that overview, is to remind you all that passing this out of committee is not the end of the story. We'll still have we still have to present it to the public in our multi-stage process. So if you feel that you haven't really studied these policies as much as you would like, I would submit to you that you can trust the work of the administration here, and then verify after it leaves committee by posting any questions you have to Rahima, who will direct them to appropriate staff to get an answer. Or if as a policy it rings false for you, we can raise those at future meetings when it's on the agenda as a discussion item. Does that sound fair to everyone? Does anyone have any burning questions right now about a particular policy? I see the superintendent's hand is up.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. It's not about a particular policy. I just want to commend the process. This is very comprehensive. It is very thorough. It gets multiple stakeholders involved, starting with the individuals who are most expert or knowledgeable in the area, but then you do a circle around. So I just wanted to commend you and the committee for really, really good work.
And I'll direct the vast majority of that to Rahima, who proposed the process and who has been a particular drill sergeant about getting people to stick to the process. And that's the hardest part, to be honest with you, getting people to stay on track and on timetable. So, anybody?
Let me just real briefly throw in that Yolanda and Jean, this is the work was phenomenal. I mean, the thoroughness, the consideration, the efficiency. We have been trying to get these policies looked at and revised for years, and nobody's ever been able to take the time. It's just, I think it was too daunting, just the sheer volume. And you guys got us back within regs, and we've been out. I think we and so, great job, both of you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rahima. You did make it very easy to collect all of this information and get it back to everyone. So I appreciate that.
Agreed.
I just want to add,
appreciate y'all.
Adding to what Steve said, Jean and Yolanda, you set a standard for which the rest of the organization is obliged to follow.
Uh-oh.
Thanks. High expectations is a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
That's right.
Commissioner Powell?
Yeah, I'm checking the list. There are no questions.
Oh, no, I was going to say that we needed to go ahead and have a motion for it out of committee. And
Would anyone like to do the honors of moving this entire Part 1, Part 2 packet?
A motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Elliott. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't see Van. That's the only person I need to see. I lip read. That was an aye. Okay.
Yeah,
So
aye.
we have a unanimous vote to move all of these, Part 1 and Part 2 of the special ed, out of committee. Great job. Heavy lift, huge lift. And Part 3 will be coming out of our next policy committee meeting. It's following right on the heels of these. We have already started moving into the schools portion as well. Not sure if we'll be able to bring you a big packet or just a small packet next month. Okay? Is that our whole agenda, Rahima?
that is our whole agenda.
Okay, in that case, I will turn the gavel back over to our board president. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Just from a technical perspective. Oh, go ahead. Somebody want to say something?
No, I said good night. Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank
Just from a technical perspective, when we literally hand the gavel back over, because I know the question was raised, what we're doing is you're adjourning your meeting. And that gives the opportunity for the next chair to convene his or her next meeting. Before that meeting, well, now that that meeting is officially adjourned, I did want to say, Willa, and to everybody, you are correct in your kudos to all the folks that did this, Rahima, and everybody else who was referenced. But Willa, I remember when you were discussing with our newest board member, Commissioner Clark, the possibility of switching assignments. And one of the reasons why you suggested that you serve as chair of policy is because of your familiarity with it and your real desire to try to get things organized. And I know you would not take credit for all the work that was done today, because you couldn't, because as you indicated, a lot of other people did the work. But just want to make sure that you understand you have the board's thanks for taking on this very, very intense, laborious process, and you're getting us through it in a way that I don't think we could do it with anybody else. So thank you, Commissioner Powell. Last item on the agenda is I understand that we have to go into not executive session, we have to go into a closed session to speak to our attorney about legal matters. As you all have heard me say before on behalf of the board, sometimes you got to speak to your lawyer, and you have to speak to your lawyer in private because the circumstances require it. And that's what the board has to do today. We're going to we're going to briefly adjourn to speak to our lawyer. We'll come back out of that closed session with our lawyer. We'll do our survey, and then we will adjourn. So I can tell you that there's not going to be any business conducted after we come back into session except the survey. So I would encourage you folks who are watching to turn off your computers and turn your attention to those people who are really important in your lives. But we, again, appreciate you attending tonight. Tom, tell me when we're in a closed session and we can have that discussion with our lawyer. Evening, everybody. We are back in session. As I promised, we had our conversation with our lawyer, and that conversation is complete. And as I indicated, there's nothing that the board has to vote on. The only thing that we have to do is finish our survey, which, by the way, our staff calculated or tabulated the results, and we'll be releasing those sometime in the very near future. So, Kalia, why don't you put up the survey for today, and we'll do it, and then I'll take a motion to adjourn once we're done.
Just 1 second. We just got to remove your, I'm going to end this one. Don't stop. You got to take your co-host abilities.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Is it up? Let's see where to. I don't.
Nope,
Maybe it's just. Oh, you don't see it either, Will?
No, nothing's up.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay, we got it. Okay. Kalia, tell me when everybody's set, and then I'll just look for somebody. I'm sure somebody will give me a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Just
That's
waiting.
Commissioner Malloy. Oh,
Yeah,
wait.
we're not finished.
Hang in there, Commissioner Malloy. We're almost there.
All right.
You all set?
Mhm.
All right, Commissioner Malloy made the motion. Who seconded it?
Second.
Vice President Elliott. All those in favor of adjourning, going home, or turn off the screens and being at home, indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Be safe.
Good night.